My boyfriend dumped me over red flags, his best friend made up. He begged to return, but I made him confront her before cutting him off. I, 23F, had been with my boyfriend Eric, 24M, for about 8 months. Eric had never had a long-term relationship before, and most of his ex-girlfriends were flings that lasted only 3 or 4 months. Naturally, I love to believe that this relationship was meaningful for him. But a few days ago, I discovered that may not be the case. Eric's best buddy, Olivia, 24F, has been his neighbor for more than 14 years. They met when they were 10 years old and have remained inseparable since. They attended the same school, college, and now work in the same place. When I say best friend, I mean it. Eric never does anything without consulting Olivia first. Even the decision to date me was not totally his own. He later told me that every lady he'd ever dated had to get Olivia's approval first. If Olivia asked him to end the relationship, he would. I believe this explains why his previous relationships failed. Eric only told me about this 4 months into our relationship, stating he believed it was time. I had already become strongly attached to him, so I chose to stay. Yes, I understand, bad decision. If I had known about his unusual need for Olivia sooner, I would not have gone on a first date with him. My relationship with Olivia wasn't terrible, at least not until recently. Olivia and I met numerous times, and while we were polite, I had the impression she wanted to quietly show me that Eric would always be hers first. When it was just the 3 of us, she made me feel alienated and uncomfortable. Initially, I made every attempt to befriend her, but my efforts were futile. It appeared that she had already made up her mind against me. To make matters worse, I unintentionally made it into a competition between ourselves. She wasn't going to take it lying down. Finally, around 5 days ago, something occurred. I was feeling quite ill, and because I work away from home, I didn't have someone to look after me. My roommate was on a trip, leaving me completely alone. Normally, I wouldn't rely on a male, but this time, I called my boyfriend and asked him to come over and help me out. He was apprehensive at first, but I assumed it was because he didn't want to catch whatever I had. So I told him it was only a stomach illness and he will be okay. But, even so, he appeared reluctant. I asked him what was going on, and he said he was going to watch a movie and then have lunch with Olivia. He was unsure whether he'd be able to make it. I was already sick and not feeling well, and Eric was prioritizing Olivia over me. I had always understood that if it came down to it, he would choose Olivia over me, but it still hurt. I became incredibly furious off and told him he should date Olivia instead, then hung up. I didn't answer any of his calls after that. An hour later, Eric arrived and apologized for what he did. I was relieved when he arrived because, honestly, if he hadn't, I would have ended our relationship. He informed me that he had canceled his arrangements with Olivia and even brought me homemade soup. That day, I felt really positive about him. We spent the day together, and by the time he left that night, I was feeling much better. But I had no idea my actions would have ramifications. Eric stopped contacting me the very following day. No calls or texts for the entire day. I panicked a little, thinking something horrible had happened to him. I tried to contact him throughout the day but had no luck. At approximately midnight, he called me back. He talked in an entirely different tone, serious, even upset. After inquiring if I felt better, he suggested I sit down. Then he broke up with me. At first, I assumed it was a joke, but he kept talking. He said it was difficult for him to come to this conclusion, but he had finally understood that my conduct was nothing but a bunch of red flags, and that he couldn't stay with me any longer. I was completely confused. As far as I was concerned, I had not done or said anything to him that would have raised a red flag, at least not knowingly. I had always strived to be a decent person and a good girlfriend. This was a major shock for me. I didn't know what to say, so I remained silent as he informed me he couldn't be with me anymore. Then he hung up. The suddenness of it all astounded me. We had just had such a nice time together the day before, and now he was telling us we were overdue for red flags. It didn't make sense. I ended up weeping myself to sleep that night because I couldn't contact or text him for help. After we broke up, he blocked me everywhere. There was no way for me to receive closure or an explanation. Eric didn't even have the decency to break up with me in person, despite how long we'd been dating. He also did not provide a good explanation. For the next 2 days, I was extremely distraught and preoccupied at work and when completing housework. I just couldn't accept that it had ended so quickly. I kept repeating our last few exchanges in my thoughts, trying to figure out what had prompted him to suggest that I had a lot of red flags, but I couldn't come up with anything. The Olivia factor had not even occurred to me because I hadn't seen her in a few weeks and had forgotten how much she dominated Eric's life. Anyway, last night I finally got a call from Eric. I was taken aback because I hadn't expected it. I had just started to digest our separation, so it felt quite sudden. I answered the phone, and he immediately began apologizing. He didn't even give me the opportunity to say anything at first. He sounded hysterical, so I let him vent. He said he didn't want to break up with me. Olivia was the one who made him do it. Apparently, she disliked the fact that I forced him to cancel plans with her and convinced him that it was a red sign. She even brought up a few of other seemingly innocuous things I do to depict me as a giant red flag. Eric said he had fallen for it. Olivia, he claimed, had fed him a series of lies, alleging that I was attempting to build a rift between them and that this was a warning sign. She also distorted things like me preparing meals I like or buying clothes for him that I believed he'd look beautiful in, making them appear as manipulative efforts to control his life. I couldn't believe anyone would fall for such rubbish, let alone break up over it, but Eric was probably an idiot. He then apologized for everything and begged me to accept him back. He claimed he was willing to do whatever it required. My blood was boiling, so I said nothing for a time. I struggled to keep my rage under control. All this time, I blamed myself for the breakup, believing it was my responsibility. But now I see that was all Olivia's doing, and she was most likely fine with it. I should have expected her to try anything to get back at me. After all, I had stolen Eric from right beneath her nose. When I was sick, his decision to care for me and cancel our plans must have made her perceive me as a competitor. She couldn't have it, so she made sure we broke up. Everything suddenly made clear. Eric was pleading with me over the phone, imploring me to accept him back. He even had the arrogance to say that Olivia would no longer be a problem because he would keep our connection a secret from her. I was appalled. Even after all had transpired, he couldn't realize how much Olivia was in charge of his life. If he had broken up with me for another reason, I might have considered taking him back. But I couldn't believe he ditched me over something Olivia had said without considering for himself. Eric was clearly an imbecile. Whether or not he kept our relationship covert, Olivia would maintain control over him, and he would continue to do anything she wanted like a puppet. What upset me even more was Eric's refusal to recognize that Olivia might not have his best interests at heart. He was even willing to hide our relationship in order to keep their so-called friendship. This was a huge red flag for me. I had no intention of getting back to him. I had already made up my mind the moment he revealed the true reason for the breakup. I'd cried enough for this person, and he didn't deserve it, but I couldn't just let it go without trying to put Olivia in her place. That's why I did something so selfish and manipulative, and, while I'm not proud of it, I believe it was necessary. Last night, I told my boyfriend that I would only get back with him if he notified Olivia about his decision and confronted her for controlling his life. He'd have to inform her that she wasn't his employer and that he'd be getting back with me regardless of her. Only if he did that would I contemplate getting back together, because if Olivia humiliated me, I would undoubtedly reciprocate the favor. When I told Eric what I wanted him to do, he was horrified and tried to persuade me to reconsider, stating it was excessive and unneeded. He protested for a long, trying to get out of it, but I was determined. I informed him that I would only respond if he texted her what I had asked. Otherwise, he may say farewell and remain broken up. After a few more minutes of fighting, Eric finally gave in. He sent Olivia those texts and even provided me with a screenshot as proof. I instantly hung up and blocked him. I knew it was petty and cruel, but I couldn't help it. I'd been upset over the past 3 days about our breakup, and this was the least I could do to feel some sense of justice. AITA? Am I the asshole for forcing Eric to send Olivia those texts, especially since I had no intention of responding in the first place? Update 1. It's been 2 days since I spoke with Eric, and he hasn't been able to reach me since. Olivia is unable to contact me since I have also blocked her. I initially felt awful about what I forced Eric to do, but after reading the replies below, I realize I don't have a good reason to feel that way. Eric had a choice, and he chose to send Olivia those texts because he wanted to be with me rather than her. It's not like I held him at gunpoint. He did exactly what he desired. Yes, lying to him about getting back together was wrong, I accept it, but I don't believe what I did was as horrible as what had happened to me. He didn't think twice before convincing me that I was the red flag in our relationship when it was truly him all along. He did everything his so-called BFF requested him to do, regardless of how it affected me or his own life. He had no idea how bad I felt throughout the time we were apart. I had no answers and started overthinking what I'd done, which just made me more puzzled. So forgive me if I don't feel too awful about what I did. I haven't told anyone about my breakup with Eric yet, but I assume I'll have to start shortly. Only a few hours earlier, one of my friends invited Eric and me to her birthday celebration. When I arrive without him, I will have to explain his absence. I'm dreading that part because I'm not sure what I'll say when people ask why we broke up. Especially since we were happy on the surface. I'll have to come up with something, but that's okay. At the very least, I am done with that relationship. Update 2. Hello everyone, it's been over a week since I broke up with Eric. I assumed that blocking Eric and his BFF Olivia would mean that I'd never have to interact with them again. Unfortunately, this was not the case. This morning, I received a call from a number I did not know. Naturally, I let it ring the first time, but when they called again, I responded. It was Olivia on the phone. As soon as I heard her voice, I was prepared to hang up because I had absolutely no desire to chat with her. But then she warned that if I hung up, it would only reveal that I was a coward and frightened to confront her. I should not have let it affect me, but it did. So I stayed on the call. Olivia then went on to say terrible things about me right in front of my face. She called me a variety of names for what I'd done, including a sneaky little liar, and expressed her relief that Eric and I had split up since he was too good for me. Then she called me the B word, which really irritated me, and I snapped. I told her just what I thought of her. I told her she was nothing more than Eric's backup girlfriend and would most likely spend her entire life trying to keep other girls away from him so she could have him all to herself. I believe I struck a nerve with that one because, as soon as I said it, she began fumbling and sounding like she was about to cry. I took advantage of that and went even further. I informed her that she could scream at me all she wanted, but Eric had the option not to send her those texts. It was his decision, and he chose me over her. That was the final straw. On the other end, I could hear her start crying. I didn't feel sorry for her because she'd called to make me feel awful. But here she was, crying. I'm not sure if she and Eric are still on speaking terms, but I hope she runs to him and complains about what I said. If they come after me again, I'd love to put both of them in their place and remind them that I'm not someone they can mess with and get away with it. They aren't the only ones who have the right to damage others' sentiments. They need to realize that if they're comfortable handing it out, they should be equally comfortable receiving it. Update number 3. Hey, there. Olivia called me 2 days ago, and the conversation ended horribly for her. Like I stated, I was hoping Eric would confront me about it so I could tell them both off. That finally occurred today. The person who introduced us was hosting a party, and we were both invited. She was unaware that Eric and I had ended our relationship. Eric entered the party about an hour in, accompanied by Olivia. They both appeared ready to battle. I drew my friend aside and recounted the entire issue to her. I even offered to depart early in case things went wrong. While I wanted to cause a spectacle, I didn't want it to happen on my friend's birthday and steal the spotlight from her. It would not have been nice. But my friend suggested I stay. She admitted that she wouldn't mind if we confronted one another at the party because she wanted to see the drama play out in person, especially after what I'd told her. I had the decency to ignore Eric and Olivia since, if anyone was going to start a fight, it had to be them. I was classier than that. But when it came to teaching them their place, I was willing to fall to their level. Eric approached me about a half hour after they arrived at the party, while I was speaking with another guy. I wasn't flirting, just making normal small talk. I believe he simply wanted an excuse to put me down because he walked up and loudly stated that I had already moved on from him. He then called me a cheater and a phony in front of everyone. Olivia appeared behind him with a malicious smirk. I swear I wanted to slap that nasty smile off her face, but I managed to restrain myself. Eric was spouting crap right in my face, even bringing up the phone call from a few days ago. He said I was mistaken about Olivia being the backup since, in fact, I was the backup and not worth dating. I laughed in his face since, if I recall correctly, he was the one who came crawling back to me just days after dumping me over what Olivia had told him. He'd had his say. Now it was my chance to reveal him and his loving BFF for who they really were. I told him that both he and Olivia were much below my level. He should have counted himself lucky that he could persuade me to date him in the first place. As far as I was concerned, he was Olivia's spineless puppet, and no other woman would want him. At the very least, I was willing to give him a chance, but he blew that as well. Furthermore, his so-called BFF was depressed and insecure enough to want to end our relationship simply because he spent a day with me while I was unwell. She even utilized a new phone number to reach me, indicating how essential I was to her. Honestly, her acts betrayed her insecurity and pitiful nature. They were an ideal complement for one another. I genuinely hoped they got together because no one should have to cope with individuals like them. By then, the party had come to a halt. Everyone stared at us silently. Eric had nothing to say and simply stared at me. Olivia, without a clear response, began flinging expletives at me. She got up in my personal space, plainly trying to get me to punch her so she could retaliate. But I maintained my calm. I didn't even want to touch her. Eric decided to leave when she began to have a breakdown. They obviously did not want to be any more ashamed than they already were. Once again, their pitiful little attempt to humiliate me had failed. Eric had to literally drag Olivia away because she refused to accept defeat. After they went, my friend approached me, told me how awesome I was, and we all laughed about what occurred. We resumed partying and finished the evening on a high note with cocktails and a delicious dinner. I'm pleased with what happened because I got the closure I needed. Update 4. Hey everyone, here's a little update. I just found out that Olivia and Eric are finally together, lol. It's been 3 months since our little altercation at the party, and I guess they recognized I was correct. No other reasonable person would put up with them separately, so they chose to date each other instead. I heard this from a friend of a friend, as I no longer communicate with any of them. As for me, I'm seeing a new guy who is exactly my type. I hope this works, and that he doesn't have a psycho best friend that he hasn't told me about. Am I the asshole for refusing to help my father and stepmother and telling them they deserve the karma hitting them hard right now? So, when I was around 16, my father, 44 million, began seeing my stepmother Julia, 30 million, and they married 2 years later. Just to clarify, this woman never liked me. She's the reason I was kicked out of my house at 19. Since then, I haven't spoken with either my father or her, until a few days ago, when my father arrived at my place to talk. I'll get to that later, but first, I need to explain what went wrong so you can see who Julia truly is. My mother died when I was just 9 years old. My father had been in other relationships since then, but he was completely committed to Julia from the start. She moved in with us within a few months. Even though she was only a few years older than me, she required me to address her as mom. At the time, I was 16 and she was 24. We were just 8 years apart in age. I never called her mom, or saw her as maternal, since I thought it was inappropriate. Even if she had been older, I doubt I would have addressed her as mom, because my biological mother had died only 6 years earlier. I wasn't prepared to start calling someone else mom, and replacing her so quickly. Furthermore, when Julia made her request, she had only been with my father for 8 months. They might take their relationship at their own pace, but that didn't mean I had to accept her into my life at the same rate, especially since she hadn't tried to get along with me. I calmly informed her that I would not feel comfortable referring to her as my mother because I did not feel linked to her or saw her as a maternal figure. I don't believe I was impolite, but she began to pick on me for no apparent reason after that. She would either be extremely hostile or completely ignore me. It was strange, and it was evident that I refused to address her as mom. I never understood why it was important to her. As far as I was concerned, my father adored her and had totally accepted her as his companion. That should have been enough, but she was fixated on being my mother. She even behaved like she was, albeit not in a good or compassionate manner. She would order me around and pretend to have authority over me. It was as if she wanted to establish herself as a capable mother figure. This behavior bothered me. I'd remind her that she wasn't my mother and didn't need to be so involved in my life since I wasn't ready to give her the responsibility. She'd complain to my father, we'd argue, and things would become uncomfortable. But, in the end, my father and I loved each other enough to reconcile despite Julia. This was how we spent nearly 4 years. After they married, I assumed Julia would start acting normally because she no longer had any reason to be insecure. However, their marriage made her even more determined to become my mother. A few months after their wedding, she sat me down for the same conversation. This time, she said she would love it if I called her mom, since now that she and my father are married, it will help complete our family. She required that I acknowledge her as my mother before anything could happen. By then, I'd seen her true colors. I couldn't believe she had the arrogance to demand that I call her mom, after mistreating me for the previous 4 years. I wasn't especially pleased with their marriage because I knew she didn't like me, and to be honest, I didn't care for her either. I've never been one to mince things, and at 18, I made that abundantly plain to her. After the way she had treated me over the previous 4 years, I had no desire to accept her as my mother or assist her in realizing her dream of a perfect family. I advised her to concentrate on being married to my father and stop worrying about becoming my mother because it was pitiful. I informed her that I already had a mother, whom I adored, and that just because she died in an accident didn't mean the post was open. In very straightforward and respectful terms, I told her that I was not going to replace my mother and that she should stop trying. I also added that her fixation with being my mother was strange, scary, and completely unappreciated, especially given how brutally she had treated me simply because I refused to call her mom. I'm not proud of it because it wasn't very nice, but I did hint that her obsession was psychologically abnormal. That remark evidently irritated her, since she stopped speaking to me entirely following that chat. It was as if I didn't exist for her. At the time, I didn't think it was an issue. In fact, I was relieved when she eventually decided to stop bothering me. About a year later, I understood she had used that time to turn my father against me. It happened so gradually that I didn't realize my father was distancing himself until it was too late. When I realized, I attempted to fix things. I tried multiple times to bond with him, hanging out, talking, and reconnecting, but he was either too busy or constantly with Julia. I recognized that his priorities had evolved after his second marriage, and I attempted to give them space. But it backfired because Julia took up all of his available space in life. Things only got worse after I moved away to college. Whatever little communication I had with my father was vanishing as well. It felt dreadful, and I knew I needed to do something about it. One weekend, I planned to surprise my father by going home. I anticipated him to be pleased, but he appeared annoyed. He informed me he had planned to go out to dinner with Julia, but now that I was home, he couldn't do so. I found this quite offensive and challenged him about his actions. I told him he was acting aloof and strange, and it pained me that he wasn't even pleased with my surprise visit. I conveyed that it felt like he no longer cared about me. In despair, I lashed out at Julia, accusing her of turning him against me. This evolved into a full-fledged argument. My father told me that he knew I had something against Julia since the beginning. He said Julia wasn't attempting to turn him against me, but rather I was trying to turn him against her. He accused me of trying to brainwash him into thinking Julia was the bad guy, despite the fact that she had done everything she could to win me over. According to him, I was the one who turned down her attempts to bond because I did not want to betray my mother. He even suggested my mother would be upset with my behavior. My father informed me that making up tales about Julia to build a wedge between them would not succeed. Over time, I saw that Julia was gradually changing the narrative, telling my father that I had been ignoring and mistreating her from the beginning. Whenever my father was around, she was nothing but lovely, leading him to believe she was incapable of being mean to anyone. He gradually came to believe her account of events. He assumed I was causing issues because I couldn't accept Julia as his wife or come to terms with his departure. This was far from the truth, but my explanation fell on deaf ears. He accused me of attempting to sabotage their relationship and lying about Julia. Then he issued an ultimatum. Either I start respecting Julia, call her mom, and accept their relationship, or I leave. When my father said this, I didn't bother to argue. I hadn't unpacked anything yet, so I grabbed my bags and marched out, never looking back. After that, I went directly to my uncle's place. He was the closest relative I had. He's my mother's older brother and has always had a warm spot for me. I knew that no matter what challenges I had, he would assist me. At the time, I hadn't told my uncle much about Julia. I already knew he didn't like her or support my father's connection with her. Part of this was due to his loyalty to my mother, and part of it was because he thought the age difference between my father and Julia was too great. I didn't want him to detest my father any more than he already did, so I kept quiet. However, after I was kicked out, I told everything to him. He was infuriated. He told me that I had done the right thing by refusing to call her mom, and that Julia was a complete nutcase. He also called my father an absolute moron for believing all of her falsehoods. Once he realized the truth, he told me that he would take care of everything. He offered to cover all of my expenditures, including college tuition, which had previously been my father's burden. He also said that if I ever needed a place to stay, I could always come to him. Even after I graduated, he promised to help me out. True to his word, he supported me every step of the way and has become more of a father to me over the last 6 years than my biological father ever was. As I previously stated, I have not had touch with my father or Julia in 6 years. No one else in the family has. After I told my uncle everything, he was so enraged that he told everyone. I didn't ask him to do anything, but he was too angry to worry about the implications. He notified both my mother's and father's side of the family about the incident. According to what I've heard, no one has contacted my father or Julia since I was kicked out, as they were all against what had transpired. According to my uncle, several individuals attempted to persuade my father to listen, but he refused. He accused me of lying and said they should not trust me. Fortunately, my family knows I am not the person my father and Julia portrayed me to be. As a result, my father and Julia have been forced into extreme isolation. However, I doubt they care because they have not contacted anyone in the last 6 years. On the other hand, I'm doing well for myself. Following graduation from college, I began interning at my uncle's real estate firm. I eventually obtained my real estate license and relocated earlier this year from my former apartment to a much larger one in a more desirable location. I am no longer concerned about my finances. I've even started paying my uncle back, despite his insistence that he doesn't want anything from me. My financial situation is crucial because I believe it is what prompted my father to contact me again. Karma seemed to have caught up with him and Julia. A few months after giving birth, Julia was engaged in a horrific accident. She is currently bedridden and unable to move. My dad paid me a visit a few days ago. During our talk, I discovered that he had quit his job a few years before to start his own firm. Unfortunately, things haven't been going well because the epidemic struck shortly after he started. He has been experiencing financial difficulties. Furthermore, Julia refused to work, leaving him with sole responsibility for financial management. This circumstance is not surprising to me. Julia quit her work shortly after they got married, which he chose to disregard. Things got even more difficult financially when she found she was pregnant and decided to keep the kid. She gave birth approximately 6 months ago. Then, last month, she was involved in a horrific accident while driving herself home from lunch with her friends. She totaled the automobile due to icy roads and a little too much champagne. Fortunately, she was not charged, but it doesn't matter because she severely hurt herself and is now bedridden, unable to move as she heals. My father is in a bad situation because their medical insurance does not cover hiring a nurse. He needs to pay for one out of pocket because he can't stay at home to care for Julia and must work to prevent bankruptcy. Meanwhile, they've been leaving their kid with Julia's parents, but her parents just informed my father that they couldn't watch the child every day because they needed to live their own life. This resulted in a dispute between my father and Julia's parents, with him accusing them of being greedy. As a result, they refused to look after the baby anymore. My father, now out of alternatives, admitted he had no one else to turn to and chose to contact me for assistance. When he paid me a visit, he recounted everything in the hopes that I would intervene. Without hesitation, I declined. I'm not good around newborns, and I definitely didn't want anything to do with Julia's child. Given how much agony the two of them had given me in the past, I refused to allow myself to be used to solving their problems. I told my dad that, while it was good to see him, I was no longer here to serve his purpose. He became enraged, claiming he had gone to considerable lengths to obtain my contact information. From his statements, I deduced that he must have pestered some relatives until they informed him where I lived. I didn't think this was a great attempt, and his entitlement simply made me angry. I reminded him that when I needed him the most, when I begged him to believe me, he had refused. He chose Julia over me, and now I'm choosing myself over him. Despite my repeated requests, he refused to leave. I finally lost my patience. I warned him that if he didn't leave, I would contact the cops, which would end horribly for him. In a heated exchange, I informed him I had no sympathy for him and was not interested in assisting or forgiving him. I said he and Julia deserved all they were going through. After all, Julia had continually lied about me, portraying me as the monster. My father had decided to trust her falsehoods and prioritize her ludicrous requests, even to the point of kicking me out. Instead of believing his own daughter, he favored his wife and her unreasonable expectations. When I said that, he looked shocked and swiftly departed without saying anything. I now feel guilty about what they are going through. I know it's bad, and I'm not sure if I should have stated they deserved it. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I'm not the judge. Still, the guilt weighs on me. Edit. I called my uncle to tell him of my father's visit. He spoke with a few relatives and confirmed that my father had reportedly been contacting everyone after many years, searching for my location. Most people had not responded, but one family on my father's side, who isn't very close to me, felt sorry for him and provided him my contact information and address. So, I was correct. My father did not go to the great lengths that he stated. He was only attempting to make me feel bad. Update 1. I'd like to thank everyone who commented on my post. It was a lengthy post, and I have not discussed it in depth with anyone other than my uncle. It was good to finally get everything off my chest, particularly regarding Julia. Her actions deeply traumatized me when I was younger. Based on the remarks, I believe I was correct in stating that Julia may have had some mental health issues. Her eagerness for me to embrace her as my mother was overwhelming. That being said, I can only infer it. I cannot diagnose her. However, I believe she would benefit greatly from seeing a psychiatrist to determine what was driving her conduct. It seems ridiculous for her to act the way she did simply because I refused to call her or accept her as my mother. Throughout my father's relationship with Julia, I tried to make explanations for his behavior. I knew he loved her, so I tried not to make a scene. But it didn't seem to matter. He didn't care. When it came down to it, he chose Julia above me, his biological daughter. So he had the guts to come up at my house after 6 years of no communication, asking me to assist him out. Even now, I know he was not sincerely sorry. He just apologized because he wanted my aid, not because he truly meant it. In reaction, I have taken precautions to protect myself. I've upgraded security measures around my house in case he shows up again. If he does and refuses to leave when I ask, I will contact the cops right away. Ideally, I'd prefer that he not show up at all, but I realize that's wishful thinking. He's going to come back and attempt to get me to help him again. He already has my contact details. He had been contacting me for the past few days, but I blocked him after a few hours. It's been nearly 5 days since his visit, and I presume he's been taking his time. However, I have a feeling he'll come up again. Just so you know, I'm not afraid of what he may do, it's just that I'm already emotionally spent, and I don't want a long argument with him. That is why I am taking every precaution to avoid protracted chats and have him depart as soon as possible. I'm hoping that when I see him again, it won't be too emotionally draining. Update 2. 2 days ago, I posted here that I was confident my father would return. Actually, he did. He waited a week since our last meeting and came up today. When I spotted him standing outside and ringing the doorbell, I told him over the intercom that I didn't want to speak to him. I had just gotten home from work, so I was exhausted and not in the mood to deal with him. When he refused to go, I grabbed my phone, contacted the cops, and reported him for trespassing. He couldn't hear me from inside and had no idea I'd contacted the police. Until they arrived, he waited outside my door, beating on it and complaining that I was being too hard on him. He stated Julia admitted to making everything up and that they were both deeply remorseful for everything. He explained that all they could do now was apologize and hope for the best, as they couldn't go back in time to fix things. He insisted I give them some leniency, especially given what they're going through. I couldn't believe that even after discovering Julia had lied to him, prompting him to kick me out, he became defensive rather than admitting his sins. He was taking the entire issue so nonchalantly, which was annoying. However, I maintained my composure and did not speak to him. Thankfully, the cops arrived shortly, because his "what can we do about it now" attitude was really getting on my nerves. It was especially distressing because he had wrecked his relationship with his own daughter due to Julia's lies and still couldn't hold her accountable. When the cops arrived, he lost control and began yelling at me, claiming I had lost my mind and had no right to call the cops on my own father. I didn't care. I described the entire thing to the cops. I doubt he will face any charges, but I hope this teaches him a lesson. He did not physically resist being dragged away, but he did stare at me the entire time. I could see he was mortified, but I didn't mind. I was so pleased that he was being removed and that I would no longer have to deal with him. It may sound callous, but after today, seeing how little he appeared to care that Julia lied and ruined our relationship, I feel validated. What I mentioned was completely accurate. He and Julia deserved each other, and more importantly, they earned everything that was happening to them. Perhaps the small one didn't deserve it, though. The only person I feel sorry for in this circumstance is my half-brother. There's not much I can do about it but hope for the best. I sincerely hope for the best for him, at least since I have nothing against him. He's merely a youngster who has no idea what his parents are like. I'm praying that he doesn't get caught up in all of this commotion and has to suffer as a result. If he does, he will be the second child Julia and my father have failed, after me. Update 3. After the officers took him away, my father did not contact me for over 3 weeks. Then, a few days ago, I got an SMS accusing me of being awful. The message stated that I was a terrible person and that they regretted reaching out to me in the first place. It stated they were ridiculous to expect me to understand their situation because I've always been a selfish brat who didn't care about anyone else. According to the book, selfishness, not Julia, damaged my connection with my father. The message came from a number I didn't recognize, so I assumed it was my father or Julia. It doesn't matter. That was the last I heard from them, and they haven't contacted me again since. Interestingly, I heard about my father and Julia again today. My uncle called to tell me that a few cousins on my father's side had notified him of their current position. Apparently, my father and Julia are now living separately because he has been requested to leave his home. Julia's parents have moved in to care for her and the baby. According to my uncle, my father considered leaving the infant in foster care until they could get back on their feet. Julia became outraged and threatened to divorce him. Although he was able to calm her down, she was still so enraged that she had him kicked out of the house while she healed. I find it amusing that after kicking me out, he is now experiencing the same situation. One thing is certain, Julia has a mental health problem. Normal people do not behave in such extremes. That being said, I don't have to worry about it because she's no longer in my life. I just think it's funny that my father is going through this, and I felt compelled to share. This is really his karma. My toxic best friend overstepped by claiming maid of honor, disrupted wedding plans, and planned her wedding on my date to create chaos. Original post. Some background info about this girl. Let's call her Jess. At this point in her life, she's kind of a hot mess. She's one of those people who airs everything on Facebook, who has a new love of my life every month, and a new best friend every few months. Her relationships and friendships usually end terribly, with both sides hating each other. How did I become her best friend? Well, she hasn't always been this way. She was relatively normal 5 years ago when I met her, save for the normal, early 20s drama. But in the last 2 years, she's lost her mom to cancer and her grandpa to old age, and she doesn't have any other family. She dropped out of school and found out her boyfriend at the time was cheating on her. After the breakup, I was acting like a shoulder to cry on since she had pretty much hit rock bottom. A few months later, she was telling everyone how close we were and started tagging me as her best friend. A few months ago, I got engaged. Unbeknownst to me, she started telling everyone she was my maid of honor, even though I've always planned on making my sister my maid of honor. But this was right after Jess's mom had died, so I just improvised and said I would have 2 maid of honors. It's still not what I would have liked, but I literally couldn't bring myself to tell this poor girl I don't consider her my best friend. That was my first mistake. About a month after I got engaged, she met a guy. 2 weeks later, she was engaged. A week later, she was married. A month later, she was divorced. Separated? I don't know if it's legal yet. I don't know if anything was legal, but she changed her last name and is still going by that, so I'm guessing it was legal. Ever since the divorce, my own wedding planning has become unbearable. She is constantly telling me how marriage doesn't work, love can't save things, etc., etc., and criticizes how much I'm spending on my wedding when she had hers for a few hundred. Vegas wedding? It's gotten to the point where she's rude to the vendors I'm meeting with, but she gets really upset when I don't take her to meetings since she's the maid of honor. So I'm at the point where I just want to cut her out of the wedding, like I should have done in the first place. However, when I confessed this to a mutual friend, my friend let me know to be careful because Jess can be really vindictive. When she found out her ex from a few years ago was getting married, she tried to contact the bride and tell her he was cheating on her. He wasn't. One of her last besties was fired from her job because Jess made multiple email accounts and regularly contacted customer service complaining about her. And since she knows so much info about my wedding already, I'm really terrified that she'll somehow try to sabotage it. So basically, I don't know what to do at this point. I feel like this wedding is getting away from me, but I also don't know if it'd be less painful to keep her a part of it, because it would save me all the drama. I don't know what she's capable of, so I'm really worried that she'll somehow make everything harder for me if I don't just grin and bear it. Help. Clutter girl I've been comforting through traumatic times turns out to be batshit crazy, and now I think she's going to ruin my wedding if I don't go with the flow. Relevant comments. Comment 1. To add, it might be a good idea to have passwords with your vendors to confirm your identity. OP, thank you for the advice. I was actually considering the password thing, but I don't know if that's taking things too far. I guess I'm kind of worried about vendors resenting me for being high maintenance. But I hear about bridezillas, momzillas, in-lawzillas all the time, so hopefully this isn't the worst they've seen. Comment 2. Jesus just told her, Jess, you knew him for 3 weeks before you married him. What in the ever-loving fuck did you think was going to happen? If I've only been seeing a girl for 3 weeks, I won't even poop with her in a half-mile radius. Oops, seriously, the week before the wedding was everyone kindly saying, you sure? You've known him for awfully short time. And she responded, everyone's jealous because they can't be us. Yeah. Comment 3, sounds like you need to have a very uncomfortable talk with this girl. Tell her what you told us here and let her know her negative attitude has no place in planning your wedding. You're sorry things aren't working out for her, but she is not allowed to pile this stuff on you. Tell her that you cannot have her as a maid of honor, and since she seems to think so negatively about marriage, you wouldn't expect her to do this. Up to you if you even let her attend the wedding as a guest. Oh my God, I haven't even thought about explaining how her negative attitude towards marriage could be the excuse for not having her in the wedding party. That sounds ridiculously logical, but I've been blinded by a flurry of crazy. Thank you. Update. Guys. This went full-blown crazy. Before I could have a conversation with Jess, she confronted me about it. Apparently the mutual I confided in let the whole story leak and a twisted, more dramatic version made its way back to Jess. Shit, meet a fan. It was an hour or two of me trying to explain to Jess in a somewhat calm manner that I felt she had overstepped her boundaries, and it was really taking a mental toll on me while she yelled about what a terrible friend I was and how she's tired of putting all of her faith in the wrong people, and how she was tired of trying her best to be a good maid of honor. I made the mistake of pointing out that I had never asked her to be my maid of honor in the first place, and she responded with, "Well, then I must be delusional." The first step is admitting you have a problem, so progress. Needless to say, we aren't on speaking terms. Shortly after that, I took all of your advice and called all of my wedding vendors and let them know that my fiancé and I were going to be the only people making any decisions, and set up a confirmation word with them. Apparently this shit happens a lot because nobody even asked why. I accidentally forgot to contact the bakery making our cake, but luckily they called me and asked if I was certain I wanted to cancel the wedding cake. Apparently there was a voicemail left on their machine. Wonder how that happened. Here's where things get really nuts. A few weeks after our blow-up, she apparently met some guy who is the love of her life. A few weeks after that, they're engaged. I can't make this shit up. She did it again. Then our mutual friends get invitations for her wedding, which is the same date as mine. But since they had RSVP'd for my wedding, a lot of them couldn't make it. A few days before her wedding, they have to cancel because he's already married. And you know what? So is she. I guess she never got officially divorced from that first quickie wedding. So as far as I know, no wedding actually happened. I have no idea if they still plan to. I'm just glad to be away from that circus. But anyways, I got married a few weeks ago. Everything was wonderful, the weather was great, and everyone present was a joy to be around. Except maybe my uncle, who gets a little too dancy when he's drunk, but you know. Family. Thank you to everyone who responded, and to everyone letting me know I'm not helping matters by going with the flow. I will be actively practicing caution when making friends, by running from crazy and not comforting it. Relevant comments. Comment 1. Anyone else think mutual friends are kind of shitty? She was the one who told OP to be careful about Jess, yet she decided it would be a good idea to blab about what OP told her, knowing full well it would get back to Jess. Now instead of telling Jess on her own terms, OP got ambushed instead. OP. I actually asked her about it a few days after the blow-up. Her defense was that she didn't actually tell Jess, she told another mutual friend of ours, who told someone else, who told someone else, who told Jess, so technically it wasn't her fault. Which is how by the time it got to Jess the story was somewhere along the lines of, OMG, Bubble Sex 1 is telling everyone you're ruining her life and sabotaging the wedding. All of us met at work, we all worked at the same restaurant long ago, and it was always a drama-filled place. A lot of the same people still work there and still thrive off of the drama. I'm thinking it's time for me to move on from that specific crowd. Cliques are fun in middle school. In your 20s, not so much. Comment 2. I will be actively practicing caution when making friends. By running from crazy and not comforting it. I'd like to nominate the first candidate for your new policy. The mutual friend, who somehow let the story leak, and repeated to Jess a twisted, more dramatic version of what you had confided in her. Ope. I've decided to distance myself from that crowd. We're at different points in our lives, and I just don't find gossiping all that fun. My real besties, from high school who were all bridesmaids, have all grown up and we would never pull this crap. Comment 3. I bet Jess was never actually getting married this time. It was just a plot to ensure at least some of your friends didn't make your wedding. Oop. I suspect that as well, but since she's done it before, I wouldn't be surprised if she actually went through with it. I'm assuming they were both trying to get divorced before the wedding and realized they wouldn't be able to in time, because you know, some stuff takes time and can't be erased in a jiffy, so they couldn't do it. I get the feeling this guy is either really stupid or just as crazy as she is, so at least they've found each other? My wife's sister tried to kiss me and now my wife is spiraling. Help me. Sorry for how long this is, teal daughter at the bottom. As the title says, my wife's sister made a pass at me at a recent family gathering and I have no idea what to do. For context, I think my wife Jenna is absolutely gorgeous, but she has some really negative body image issues. This is in large part because of her sister Mary, who is very conventionally attractive, as opposed to Jenna's more unconventional but, IMO, striking beauty. Mary was a successful model until a couple years ago and now works in the fashion industry. In our early days of dating, when I would tell Jenna she's beautiful, she would always say, just wait until you see my sister. When I did finally meet her family, she would randomly press me for weeks to talk about her sister, whether I thought she was more attractive than her, etc. I always told her the truth, that I think Mary is attractive in a boring way, and that I think my wife is much more beautiful and interesting to look at. She wouldn't let it go until I confronted her about how uncomfortable it made me and asked her what was going on. This is when she told me that she always had a chip on her shoulder about her looks because of being compared with her sister growing up. They fell into the classic smart one pretty one dynamic their whole lives. She also said Mary had a habit of being flirty with all of her exes and warned me that it would happen to me eventually. She then started sobbing and begging me to not cheat on her with her sister, to which I forcefully said I would never cheat on her with anyone, let alone her sister. I've been crazy about my wife since day one, and there's literally no woman on earth who could come close to her. I honestly didn't believe her about the flirting at first. I assumed it was just an extension of her insecurity, but I was wrong. Whenever we get together with my wife's family, Mary always finds ways to touch me and make little innuendos comments about me or my body. It's super uncomfortable for everyone, especially my wife, and I've called her out on it before. She'll cool it for a while but eventually start doing it again. It's been 6 years of this, and every time it happens my wife is upset for days and I have to do a lot of reassuring. On to the current problem. A few days ago we were at my MIL's birthday party and Mary asked me to help her grab some things from the garage. As soon as we walked into the garage, she turned and pressed me up against the door with her whole body and started trying to kiss me. I immediately pushed her off and asked her what the fuck she was doing. She started giggling and saying she was just doing what we both have been thinking, and kept insisting, "You know you want to." I told her she was out of her mind and ran out of there. I went straight to my wife and told her we were leaving. The whole ride home she was asking me what was wrong. I wasn't sure whether to tell her because I knew how much it was going to hurt, but I also thought Mary would probably try to spin it as me making a move on her, so I knew I had to just say it. I told her everything and she cried the whole way home. For the last several days Mary has been calling and texting my wife doing exactly what I thought she would do, even telling my wife that I said she, Mary, was the hottest girl I've ever seen, which I had to assure my wife 1,000,000 times that I did not and would never say, even though she believes my account of the situation. She's been a complete wreck the last several days. She's hardly eating. She pulls away from my touch when I try to hug her or just hold her hand. She says she feels hideous and disgusting. And I don't know what to do. This is the lowest I have ever seen her, and it hurts to see how much she's hurting. I have no idea what to do to help her heal from this. Reddit, what should I do? Teal.er, my wife's sister tried to kiss me and this is triggering deep-set body image insecurities for my wife. How do I help her? Relevant comment. OP on his in-laws enabling Mary's behaviors and the golden child status. OP. My in-laws definitely enable her behavior. She's the golden child. They brag about her constantly. Even though my wife is literally a neuroscientist. Their mom was a pageant queen and she was their dad's much younger trophy wife. Honestly, we may have to go no contact with all of them. Update 1. I got a few requests for updates, so here it is. I first want to thank everyone so much for your advice. It was extremely helpful and gave me a lot to think about. I'm especially thankful for the folks that asked me how I was doing. I realized that I have literally never had a chance to check in with myself after these things happen, and I've actually been holding a lot of frustration and resentment about it all. I've been harassed for years and it has either been brushed off or it's been eclipsed by the impact it has on my wife. I don't blame her for it, but this has been a good lesson in me not burying my feelings for the sake of others, even for her. I also want to clarify a couple of things that came up. Several people asked about how my wife's family feels about all this, and I explained in a comment that her parents are toxic and treat Mary as the golden child, even though my wife is a freaking neuroscientist, amazingly talented musician, speaks 3 languages fluently and another 2 conversationally. My wife and her family are seriously the only people who don't seem to understand how exceptional she is. I remember meeting one of my wife's family friends and talking to them about her research, and they said, "Oh wow, her parents just told us she works at a university." Whereas my parents literally introduce her as the family genius to everyone. It makes me so fucking angry to think about how her asshole family has stolen her shine her whole life. She's literally a Renaissance woman, but all they care about is looks and money. Some folks asked me why I would ever put myself in a situation alone with Mary given everything she's done. I have no good answers for that other than I never thought she would actually try to do anything. That possibility just didn't exist in my head. I realize now that I should have seen this would happen eventually. And that I should have been less concerned with keeping the peace and more concerned with shutting Mary's shit down before it escalated to this point. Hindsight is 20/20. Anyway, on to the update. The night I posted I told my wife that if she wanted to try to repair her relationship with her sister I would respect that, but that I don't feel comfortable being around her for the foreseeable future. I said Mary has obviously been deeply jealous of my wife her whole life because she is a hollow, ugly person whose entire value has an expiration date, while my wife actually has substance. I said that I think her whole family is toxic and has done nothing but put her down her whole life, but that only she can decide whether she still wants them in her life. I also told my wife that while I don't blame her for her emotional reaction, her insecurity is something that she needs to work on for our relationship to be healthy. What Mary did was sexual assault and she's been sexually harassing me for years, but I have consistently put aside my own feelings about this problem because of how it affects her, and that has prevented me from getting the support that I need to. I told her that her reaction only serves to punish herself and me for her sister's behavior, and there's no reason to give her that kind of power. I also told her something that a commenter said that really resonated with me. The only people who have ever considered her second best are her and her family. Everyone else sees her for who she really is. She was crying the whole time and agreed that she needed to go to therapy to work on her insecurity. We were able to find a therapist who specializes in body image/self-esteem issues to work with her individually, and we're looking for a couples therapist too. My wife sent a message to her parents and sister that explained exactly what happened and told them she would reach out to them if she ever feels ready to repair their relationship. We blocked all of them everywhere, but Mary has of course been spamming my family and our friends with nonsense, claiming I attacked her, I'm a drug addict, I abuse my wife, all kinds of bullshit that thankfully nobody believes. My wife is still down in the dumps, but I can see that things are getting a little better. She's eating and sleeping more, and she's cuddling with me in the mornings again, which is nice. Now I'm planning a surprise getaway for us this weekend. We're going to one of our favorite places and I'm going to wine and dine her and try to make her feel like the goddamn queen she is. I want to thank you all again for your help. You really helped me understand the severity of the problem, and again, thanks for helping me connect with my own feelings about all this. Y'all are the best. TL.dr, wife and I are going to therapy. We're going no contact with her family for the foreseeable future. I'm going to woo the hell out of my wife this weekend. Relevant comment OP on how he tries to be the best husband to Jenna and enjoying life together. The only genius thing I've ever done is marry her. I'm a pretty average dude TBH, so I have no idea how I snagged her. Sad to think her low self-esteem probably played a part, but I do work hard to be a good husband every day. Update 2. So I guess my original post got reposted onto TikTok and some other subs here on Reddit, so I've been getting tons of messages asking for updates. It feels like things are mostly settled, and I'm really hoping this will be my final update. First, I want to say that I've gotten so many questions about who Mary is, and I'm just not going to say. Suffice it to say that she's never been a household name famous, but she made a living solely on modeling for about a decade from what I understand. So she must have been popular enough that fashion people might know her. I really don't know how that whole world works. But it doesn't matter how many names you drop, you're not famous if you don't have a Wikipedia page. Also got lots of comments that, mostly, jokingly called me a simp, and I can't argue with that. I totally am a simp for my wife. She's the coolest. I hope you all find a love that makes you feel this way. Okay, I think that's it. Here is the actual update. My wife loved the getaway weekend. We had a blast, and by the end of it she said she felt like herself again. For a few days after we got back things were really quiet, so we were hopeful that Mary had finally given up, but I felt uneasy about it all. Many of you warned me that Mary would try to interfere with my work, and while I initially dismissed it, I figured I would reach out to my boss just in case. I've been working at the same company for almost 10 years and she's heard me vent about Mary before, so I didn't have to explain too much. My boss just reassured me that she knows my real character and would let me know if Mary tried anything. As you predicted, Mary did try to contact my boss a couple of days later, and the following is a recounting of what my boss told me. Apparently Mary said that I needed to be fired because I was a predator and claimed to have proof that I assaulted her. My boss said that was a very serious accusation to make and asked Mary to explain what proof she had. Mary claimed there was a camera that caught the whole incident and my boss asked her to send the video. Then Mary got flustered and said the police had it, so my boss asked her to send over a copy of the police report. Then Mary said it had a lot of private information in it, so my boss asked her to redact the private information and send it over. Then Mary said she didn't feel comfortable with that, and my boss told her that she could not take action against an employee based on word of mouth from a stranger. Then Mary shouted at her about victim blaming and hung up. Unfortunately, that was not the end of it. Last Wednesday, Mary somehow sent an email from my personal email account with a dick pic, not mine obviously, to the entire office. My best guess is that I must have left my email logged in on one of my in-laws' devices. She's definitely not smart enough to actually hack me. And I know this is completely beside the point, but of course she chose the weirdest looking dick I've ever seen. I played team sports all my life. I've seen a lot of dicks, and this was something else. It's honestly kind of funny to think about Mary googling gross penis, or something, and sifting through hundreds of images to find just the right one. I had to apologize to everyone on staff and thankfully folks were surprisingly understanding. It's actually been kind of a nice bonding experience with my coworkers. I honestly didn't consider myself to be super well liked in the office, but it feels like everyone has been going out of their way to be kind to me and it means a lot. Anyway, at this point it was clear we had to escalate things legally. I really wanted to avoid it, but she forced my hand. My wife and I have a lawyer friend who helped us draft a cease and desist letter outlining her continued harassment and the material and emotional damage this is causing us. My wife then sent a message to Mary and my in-laws with a copy of the letter and made it very clear that we would pursue criminal and/or civil proceedings if her harassment continued. My wife's mom then called her crying and begged her to just let it go and leave Mary alone. My wife calmly explained that Mary is the only person responsible for this whole situation, and that their parents have always enabled her awful behavior. She also said something she later regretted but I think was pretty badass. Mary is going to stick you two in a nursing home and steal your money the minute she has the chance, and you deserve it. After the way her mom reacted, my wife is firmly settled on cutting off her family completely. This happened on Friday, and on Sunday Mary's best frenemy Anne sent my brother a message on Facebook to say Mary is going to leave us alone and to please not sue her. I told my brother not to respond, then just sat and enjoyed the idea that Mary was out there somewhere freaking out about the potential of having to actually face the consequences of her actions. It must be such a strange feeling for her. Since then, we haven't heard a peep from the grapevine. It feels like things are finally starting to go back to normal. My wife is starting therapy next week and will be starting couples therapy in a month or two. She wants to do some work on herself first. She's also taking a short leave from work to rest and recharge. I'm so proud of her for standing up for herself with her family and finally putting her mental health and well-being first. Thanks again to everyone who offered advice. This was a messy situation, but it definitely would have been messier without your help. Teal.er, Mary tried to get me fired, so we sent her a cease and desist. Now Mary's running scared, she and my in-laws are out of our lives, and we're doing much better without them. My wife is prioritizing her wellness and I am one proud simp. Update 3, I forgot about this account completely until today and logged in to see so many comments and messages asking for an update. It's honestly touching to see how many people care about this situation and want the best for me and my wife. This will be a brief update. I don't want to make this a regular thing, and the original situation has resolved enough that I'm hopeful this will be the end of the saga. Mary and my in-laws have pretty much left us alone. My MIL still tries to contact my wife every now and then, but she's made it clear to her family that if the first words out of their mouths aren't "I'm sorry," she isn't interested in a conversation. As you can see, the past 6 months have made my wife a badass. She has done some amazing work in therapy and her confidence is growing all the time. It's not just with her family. She's more comfortable asserting herself at work, with strangers, with friends, etc. She's even stopped putting up with some of my shit. To be fair, that shit is stuff like my leaving my socks everywhere around the house, but I'm seriously proud of her for telling me to cut it out. I'm becoming a more responsible and supportive partner because she's able to communicate her needs and expectations without feeling guilty about it. And I'm able to communicate things to her without intense emotions fully eclipsing the conversation. I didn't mention this in my earlier posts, but my wife does struggle with rejection sensitivity even outside of her family. Often if I brought up something that I felt needed to change, her emotional reaction to feeling like she did something wrong would be really intense, and instead of dealing with the problem, it would become about regulating her emotions. Now my wife has really good coping tools that allow her to talk about the problem without thinking she is the problem. And the biggest update, she's pregnant. We have a baby girl due in February. I am shitting my pants with excitement. We are going to love her so much and teach her that she is more than her beauty. She's going to have happy parents who love each other and work through issues as a team. The toxic cycle will be broken. Jenna's family doesn't know, and she's not sure when she'll tell them, but if she does, there are going to be strong boundaries in place for how they can be a part of our daughter's life. And it'll start with family therapy. For now, she has one set of grandparents that will go to the end of the earth for her, and that's more than enough. My family has been absolutely incredible in their support and they are so excited for us. Things are looking better than they ever have. That's all, folks. Thanks again for your support on this wild journey. Til.er, Mary and in-laws have mostly left us alone. Jenna is a badass now. We're having a baby and soon I'll have 2 queens in my life. Captain Simp, over and out. New update. Hello everyone, I have come here for advice before and you were all incredibly helpful, and I could really use some support again. You can check my post history for the full story, but TL.dr, last year my wife, Jenna, and I had to make the decision to go no contact with her whole family. Her sister, Mary, 30F, sexually assaulted me. In-laws defended her, and after some legal wrangling they finally left us alone. The situation wrecked my wife's self-esteem and tested our relationship, but we made it through. Jenna and I had our first daughter in February. She's amazing and we're doing great. We ended up moving away from Jenna's home state, NY, to mine, May. to be closer to my family, and they've been incredibly helpful with the baby. We have not seen Jenna's family since cutting contact and blocking them everywhere, and we didn't tell them about the baby. Yesterday we received a letter in the mail from my MIL and FIL, no idea how they got our address. Apparently my FIL has been diagnosed with late-stage cancer and is being told he could be dead in weeks. In-laws went on about how sorry they were for the way they handled the situation with Mary. They also apologized for the way they've treated my wife her whole life. Again, check post history, but basically Mary was the golden child and Jenna was an afterthought despite being super accomplished. They ended by saying they recently heard about the baby through the grapevine and want to meet their grandchild. To me, the apology seemed genuine. They went into detail on what they did wrong, apologized and expressed remorse, and explained what they should have done differently. They said they hoped to earn our forgiveness with time and were willing to do family therapy to heal our relationship. Jenna is not having it. She feels like it's too little too late and doesn't want to respond. She also suspects that they're lying about FIL's cancer and just want to pressure us into reconciliation so they can meet the baby. It seems ludicrous, but I guess I wouldn't put it past them. I want to respect my wife's feelings around this, but I'm worried that if the cancer is real, she may regret not taking this opportunity for reconciliation before he dies. I expressed this to her, but she is adamant and I haven't broached the topic since. My instinct is to wait a few more days until the shock wears off to talk about it again. I just don't know what the best way to approach it would be. I certainly don't want to force my wife to do anything she doesn't want to do, but I feel like she's not thinking clearly about this right now. It also must be noted that our baby is still struggling with sleep and we're both tired and emotional all the time, so I feel like this might be influencing how she feels about all this. What should I do here? Should I try again or just let it be? TLDR, in-laws are attempting to reconcile after claiming FIL was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Wife does not want to consider it, but I am worried she will regret it later on. Edit. People, stop being mean to me. I too am tired and emotional and my feelings are getting hurt. I am not forcing my wife to do anything. I brought it up one time. I know this is not about me. I don't personally care either way, I just want to support my wife. I intend to tell her I'm here to listen, talk about it if she wants to, but I fully support her decisions around this. She has a great therapist she trusts and I'll be here to support her however I can. Relevant comments. OP on respecting his wife's decisions on how she wants to deal with the possible family health situation if it's real. OP, to be clear, I will absolutely respect whatever decision she makes. I just feel like the news is so fresh and we're in such an emotionally complex place as it is that she may not be thinking clearly about it. A similar situation happened to a friend of mine and he regretted it for years, actually turning to alcohol pretty hard for a while after. My wife has worked really hard to improve her mental health and I worry about how the regret might set her back. Although I suppose if her family is actually lying, manipulating us, that would set her back too. I just don't know. Would it be terrible to bring it up again in a few days just to see if she feels differently? Edit. I've also thought about asking my parents to take the baby for a couple of days so we can get away and recharge. Maybe just getting my wife in a better headspace would allow her to think things through more carefully / less reactively. OP receiving advice on letting his wife lead the way of dealing with her family. She knows what her family is like all her life. OP, this was really helpful, thank you so much. I will give it time and let her lead the way. I hadn't thought about that, earn it with time thing. Like if he actually is about to die, what time are they talking about? And reading from other people that this is a common manipulation tactic makes me feel more strongly that my wife's instinct about them lying is correct. OP on letting his wife make decisions and don't bring their daughter into the mix. OP, I would never do this? Not sure what part of I would never force my wife to do anything she doesn't want to do isn't getting through to people, but I would never betray her like that. I've never gone behind her back and never will. We make decisions as a team and this is her call. I don't personally care if we never see them again. It isn't about me. I came here for advice on how to support my wife and hold space for her to talk about it. All I care about is her being okay. After we announced my pregnancy, my sister-in-law's plan to humiliate me at my husband's party backfired, landing her in jail and a divorce. For the last 7 years, I, 29F, have been wed to Harry. Except for his relationship to his sister, Kayla, who brings all the negative into our life, I enjoy everything about our marriage. Now don't get me wrong, when I initially met Kayla, I loved her. But with time, I rapidly changed my view. She is poisonous, manipulative, and really negative. Knowing the kind of person she is, I have worked hard over years to be on her good side. My husband dated Syl's best friend when he was 17 in the past, but they subsequently broke up since he felt under pressure to be with her because of Syl. His sister said he and another friend of hers should be together when he turned 23 and discovered he was single, but he disagreed. She went crying to their parents about how she wanted him to wed someone she felt comfortable with, but his parents hardly really listened to her throughout their great battle. While my husband and I were meeting and falling in love, his parents were quite encouraging, but Sil always treated me coldly. She would always bring up Harry's exes for no apparent reason whenever I was present, reminding him of how well they were doing and suggesting how he could get in touch with them. This continued for some time. Harry also thought this strange and would ask her to stop bringing up his exes. I was not the only one who saw this. Then Sil would get enraged and start mocking me, claiming I was jealous and Harry shouldn't be with someone like me. Sil would deliberately invite one of Harry's exes whenever his parents would call us for supper, saying she had inadvertently come across them that day and had to ask them politely. She doesn't follow me, but she checks my Instagram constantly as well. Since I have a public account, I observed she is usually the first person to see my stories. Should a man comment on my photograph, she would then go to her brother and grumble over how I was sharing indecent images of myself. Harry and I would actually chuckle at her claims. She persuaded Harry to split off with me when he and I agreed to live together, telling him I had many defects as a woman and that she could find someone far better than him. Since I had been just friendly to her all along, this comment really wounded me. Sadly, Sil's treatment of me got even more bad as soon as Harry and I were engaged. Everyone started applauding Harry and me as we revealed our engagement, but I observed Kayla was somewhat quiet. Then, startled everyone, she sprang up from her chair and left our gathering. Later, she called Harry, sobbing and yelling about how she didn't value receiving the news with everyone else as she felt she was the closest to him and deserved to be the first one to know of his engagement. Later on, she messaged me nearly borderline threateningly, advising me on how I should treat her brother as she had always been the only female in his life. I nearly shuddered over the strange message. I left her message on scene, which I know must have offended her even more, not even bothered responding. Every time Sil saw me, she started to progressively ignore me. She stayed involved in all the wedding preparations for whatever reason, like when I went dress shopping and had my bridal shower. Though both my future mother-in-law and fiancé called her out on it several times, her criticism of the wedding reached a whole new level as she freely expressed her unhappiness with my decisions. Her actions persisted. One day, Kayla overheard me talking about the centerpiece with my future mother-in-law. She started to make fun of me right away, stating how my decision had no class and how this was why she wanted her brother to wed someone better. For me, that was the tipping point and I lost control. I made it plain to her that she was no longer invited to our wedding and yelled at her that I could not stand her continual taunting and criticism anymore. Shocked and gasping in surprise as if she had never expected me to challenge her, Kayla was infuriated even by my mother-in-law, who backed me. Later on, Kayla contacted Harry, moaning about how I embarrassed her and insisting he should control me since I would be his wife. Harry insisted strongly that he supported my choice and that she would not be invited to the wedding should she not atone. She grudgingly texted me a sincere apology. I saw it and, once more, left on read. I was already tired from getting ready for my wedding, and I wanted nothing to do with her drama. She did visit our wedding in the end since I wanted her to not criticize us afterward. Everyone, including the guests, seemed to have no issue following the pink tones and pastels chosen for my wedding. But Sil arrived looking as though she were attending a funeral, a black floor-length gown with a veil. To put it mildly, we were stunned. Sael visited everyone sharing her grief at losing her brother to another woman. My husband approached Sael about her discomfort with her wedding attire at the reception. Saying that she had the right to wear whatever she chose and that I was too domineering, she sought to portray the victim. When her non-stop scene-making persisted, my mother-in-law and father-in-law ultimately ordered her to leave. It was embarrassing for me. Ever since that day I avoid her. I forbade Sil anywhere near our kid when I delivered my son Nate. She tried to oppose it but my husband's parents had my back. They supported my choice and knew exactly why I wanted Sil far from my infant. Sil suffered a miscarriage with her then boyfriend Jamie 2 years ago and it totally shattered her. For everyone, that was indeed a depressing period. Given our already childbearing status, Harry and I felt bad for her. We chose to be somewhat more lenient following her miscarriage. She could connect with our kid Nate, so we would welcome her to our house. Despite her behavior with me, she has been rather lovely to our son, really shocking. She looked to have changed at first, but with time she returned to her former self. She constantly talks about how difficult her life is, how things never seem to go for her, and blames ex-friends or managers for upsetting her life. I have found over time that she is never wrong in her thinking. She is always attempting to get people on her side by playing the victim card and hardly acknowledges any flaws in confrontations. She chose to get married this year and invited everyone to save us. Given our relationship seemed to have improved, Harry was surprised to learn we were not invited. She began to explain how she won't let me come since I would cause disturbance to her wedding when we questioned her about it. Having never done anything to her, I phoned and asked her why she would think something like that. Kayla began to tell how she had deliberately dressed in all black for our wedding, so now she was worried that I might do the same and this was why she wanted me off-site. I informed my spouse straightforwardly about how manipulative she was, outraged about it. After discussing with his parents, Harry decided to let Sil know they would neither be attending the wedding nor would they pay for it. This turned Sil to tears, and she began to blame me for starting this disaster. Her husband told her she had no right to be pointing fingers at me as she had freely admitted her own error. Kayla, however, explained her behavior by stating that I should just get over it since our wedding was long ago. Later, she contacted me to apologize and ask for forgiveness as FIL and MIL were still not paying for her wedding. Though I hate to say it, Kayla can be quite charming and convincing when she wants something. I wanted to just go forward from the past and forgave her. Her wedding to Jamie went perfectly. We all showed up and had fun. Not even 6 months later, Kayla appeared at our door grumbling about her marriage failing. For a few days, Harry and I let her stay with us where she would spend endless hours venting about her husband. They appeared to be struggling to conceive, and Kayla was obviously blaming Jamie for everything. When I went to speak to Kayla, she insisted it was entirely her husband's responsibility. She would be hyper-focused on our lives and try to create things that didn't exist when she was not grumbling about her husband. For instance, usually every morning before heading to work I visit the gym. When I'm running late, I occasionally grab my work clothes so I may finish my workout, have a bath, and change into my business wear. Sael observed this for some time and would have many questions about it, including why I was bathing or why I even needed to visit the gym. I didn't give it much thought and would tell her how I liked keeping my weight and how I disliked visiting the office all sweaty. She would nod and lick her lips. Mill was telling us about a friend of hers who was divorcing right at lunch. She left her friend's spouse and grabbed half of his assets after learning about his adultery with her. Sael stopped her abruptly to ask my husband whether he and I had signed a prenup before we were married. We paused to stare at her. We stopped eating. She glanced at my husband expectantly as if I hadn't even arrived. My husband told her straightforwardly that he is not someone who minces his words as he and I both made rather good money and we felt no need for a prenup. Sil snorted and began to say that he could be blindsided any day and that cheats abound today. Her statements offended me, therefore I asked her to clarify exactly what she meant. Sil then began to remark how I was obviously meeting someone as I was usually carrying change of clothing everywhere and that, as Harry's sister, it was her obligation to warn her brother. These were shocking remarks for me. Phil and MIL arrived right away to save her from continuing to fabricate such things and advised she shouldn't interfere with others' affairs. Without missing a beat, Sil continued to emphasize how she was only trying to be there for her brother and began to joke if our son Nate was indeed Harry's son since he didn't quite look like him. I swear I watched the redness of wrath on my husband's face. In my life, I never had seen him this enraged. Looking Kayla squarely in the eye, he informed her that she was not a mother yet as she did not deserve to be one and that her child would be better off in paradise than with someone like her. Kayla's lips hung in stunned disbelief. MIL and Phil simply watched silently as my husband left Kayla complaining about her being a shameless person trying to ruin everything since her life had nothing to offer. She was merely a loser, he informed her, doing nothing all day while her husband worked nonstop. He kept saying that since she was plainly projecting, she should focus on her own marriage instead of pointing fingers at me and asking about prenups. Reduced to tears, Kayla began to wail. Expecting comfort, she turned to Jamie, seated just next to her, but he never spoke. My husband never has this kind of mental collapse. She eventually got up from her chair and dashed into the toilet. My husband was boiling over. I stroked his hand and Mill arrived to cool him down. Understanding just how annoying she could be, I nodded as he apologized for what his sister had said about our son. Having taken enough from Kayla over the years, I was somewhat relieved that my husband stood up for me so publicly. He apologized to Jamie but totally ignored Kayla once he cooled off. That day following lunch, we returned to no interaction with Kayla. Her actions were impacting my husband in addition to me. We simply barred her from everything so she could get in touch with us. After lunch, MIL and Phil spoke with us and decided Kayla had gone too far this time. They could see how their usually quiet son had gone wild after Kayla had persisted in pushing him. We last spoke with her a year ago, and everything has been running without problems. 2 months ago I discovered what I was expecting. Given our lack of effort, this was quite unexpected. To welcome another family member makes my spouse and me blessed. We decided to let everyone know on my husband's birthday since we were waiting for the proper moment to do so. Wanting to honor Harry, Mil and Phil were throwing a great celebration in their lawn. Invited were our close friends and relatives. Sil chose to show her face after hearing about this from others. When we saw her, my husband and I staggered. Coming to hug Harry, Sil told him how much she had missed him and how sorry she was for their last talk. Taking my hand, my spouse advised his sister to be apologetic to me because she had pointed fingers at my character. Sil nodded, looked at me, then apologized. She informed me how she had been attending therapy for the previous few months and came to see how inappropriate it was for her to treat me like that. Though I disagreed with everything she said, I nodded as I wanted to be polite to her in front of everyone. Since this was a gathering for my husband, Mil and Phil checked in on us and informed us that should we feel uncomfortable, they would kick her out as they had no knowledge she would be arriving. Harry, however, insisted on not creating a scene, hence we decided to leave this go. It seemed strange as Sil was laughing and socializing with everyone during the celebration. She mentioned visiting a therapist, so I wanted to provide her the benefit of the doubt even though she appeared overly optimistic, completely not her nature. Harry spoke movingly about how he thought he was the luckiest man on earth, appreciative of yet another year spent with a lady like me, when it came time to cut the cake. His remarks made me flush with delight. As we were when we first started dating all those years ago, I couldn't help but value the fact that my husband and I were still intensely in love. Then Harry and I made the decision to let everyone know some fantastic news. Grinning, we said we were having a baby and everyone paused to consider before yelling in delight. My mother rushed up to hug me and started to cry. As Phil saluted Harry and myself, tears streamed down his face. Everyone was eager to know whether we had chosen baby names and was clearly delighted for us. Sil was the one sore thumb that caught out. She seemed stunned. Her mood changed and she simply turned away from us, appearing irritated, so I assumed maybe she was processing things slowly. Though I was a little concerned, thinking she would ruin yet another party for us, I was sidetracked with other individuals approaching to chat. I got up to assist my in-laws carry lunch, but Rick and my parents begged me to stay seated, telling me I should not even move at this point. Sil approached me beaming as I was calmly waiting for my husband to bring me a meal. Lively saying that she personally wanted to offer me dinner, since she was so excited about my pregnancy, she handed me a dish. She even said as she passed me the plate about how she wanted to make it up to me for all the times she had been nasty to me in the past. I nodded and politely approved. She then turned to go. I was ready to start digging when I fortunately found she had put shrimp on my dish. I know I am quite allergic to shrimp, hence I was surprised Sil even brought me this. Disappointed, I shook my head and got up to get my own lunch. Jamie approached me at that point to wish well on my pregnancy. After a little conversation, he asked me why I hadn't been eating. Jamie reassured me not to worry and removed the dish from my hands after I pointed out how Sil had served me shrimp, probably by error. Since he enjoyed eating shrimp, he told me he could have this dish. I could buy a fresh plate for myself. I nodded, grinned, then turned aside. Jamie began to puke and retch across this dish 5 minutes later, not even 5. Concerned, everyone stopped eating and watched him stagger to get out of his seat. Concerned Harry and Kayla hurried towards him. Jamie gestured at his plate, then at his throat. Our eyes grew wide with amazement as we realized what he had eaten definitely made something wrong with him evident. Jamie passed out, then everyone gasped in amazement and worry. Kayla hurried over to examine his dish, and her eyes grew shocked. She turned to stare at me and inquired whether I had handed her husband my plate. I nodded. Someone called for an ambulance amid the tumult, and he was hurried to the hospital. Through all of this, Kayla was sobbing nonstop and was staring angrily at me. Jamie had been poisoned, we were told later on. Knowing that the plate belonged originally to me, I nearly passed out upon hearing this. Jamie consumed may have poisoned my baby and me. Not yet known to Harry, Mil, Fel, or my parents is this. Since nobody knew what was in the food he consumed that had caused him to faint in this manner, the police were summoned to get evidence from it. Jamie is still in recovery in the hospital while I'm typing this. Kayla stayed with him overnight. Relatives calling to find out what happened to Jamie and who might have poisoned him have my husband and I fielding calls. What has transpired shakes Mil and Fel. They are sleeping over at our house since they are terrified to return back to their house. Nobody knows what happened abruptly while everything was going so nicely. Tell everyone that the plate originally belonged to me and how Kayla had come and presented it to me makes me terribly afraid. Should this evolve into an inquiry, I will have to tell the cops the truth. Though most importantly I am now rather concerned about what my Sil could do to me, I feel quite awful about what has transpired. I don't want to be around her, nor can I bring my kids anywhere close to her as she obviously has no restraints about trying to poison me. I feel bad about handing Jamie my meal and maybe contaminating my bill. Update 1. Whoa, thanks for the thousands of comments on this post in just a few hours. I never would have guessed I could have received these many answers. I typed this earlier and had shaking hands. I haven't been able to sleep. Though what everyone says, I do feel somewhat accountable for the event involving my bill. I should have simply tossed the dish away. I'm not sure why I let him grab it from me. I keep crying about his future. Knowing something is awry, my hubby has been hovering close to me. Though he doesn't know what I know about his sister, he believes I'm only worried. I agree with the remarks saying I should get down and gently chat to everyone. Although I'm not sure if everyone will believe me, MIL and FIL do have security cameras set all around the house. Given that this birthday celebration took place in their backyard, I am confident they could check and confirm via their cameras that Kayla presented me the plate. I'll speak with everyone tonight then update. Update 2, we then chatted, and I am very happy to have the nicest in-laws on planet Earth. Mill and Phil are already staying over with us, so I sat down with Harry and them over dinner to let them know I had something crucial to share. I began by inhaling deeply, the weight of the circumstances slumping on my shoulders. Everyone gathered around. I related the birthday party's events, including how Sil had handed me a plate of prawns and Jamie had unintentionally consumed it, causing his sickness. Their shock and incredulity reflected my own as I spoke. Mill and Phil looked at each other, clearly worried. Harry's face transformed from uncertainty to rage. I went on expressing my concern about SIL's intentions and past attempts to hurt me. Faced with the possible repercussions for myself and our unborn kid, I hesitated to share this material. Being the pragmatic woman Mill is, she advised right away looking at the security camera tape. Given the gravity of the matter, FIL nodded in agreement. Though clearly offended, Harry stayed quiet to process the startling disclosure. Reviewing the security footage from their camera app, the truth was indisputable. The video shows SIL presenting to me the poisoned plate and then what happened to cause Jamie's suffering. The weight of the data made no space for uncertainty. As the knowledge sank in, emotions ran strong. Now totally aware of his sister's evil intentions, Harry battled to control his wrath. Their daughter's activities horrified Mill and Phil, who also found the extent she had gone to cause disturbance shocking. Stunned in silence, we tried to figure out why she would act in such a manner. Given this is a very serious issue, my in-laws have opted to forward this material to the police following this disclosure. Jamie is the one who has to lodge charges on Sil, hence FIL and my husband will be visiting and meeting him after he recovers. I want to cry every time I consider how I let Jamie have my poisoned dish. I have no idea how Jamie will react. I am very anxious about him, so I cannot eat anything right or sleep. I will let you know about anything noteworthy. Update 3. Alright lads, I'm back with an update at last. Although I know it has been a month since my previous update, right now I'm a pregnant woman experiencing a lot. First things first, she was detained after seeing the proof. My in-laws handed the recording to the police. Kayla admitted everything right away and did not even dispute the claims. She started crying. Jamie was as startled as any of us when my husband approached him about what had transpired. Tell him he would always be a part of our family regardless of what he decided to do. My husband advised him to press charges against his sister since this was such a wicked thing to do. Once Jamie recovered, he not only chose to prosecute charges but also sought divorce. Emotional and begging them to pardon her, Kayla called Mill and Phil. As it happens, Kayla is pregnant herself. She tried to control them by telling them they should do this for the benefit of their granddaughter, begging them to bail her out. Phil strongly advised her, nevertheless, that she should at last learn to own her acts and that they were done coddling her. Though Mill is quite depressed about what is happening to her daughter, she knows that her actions cannot be simply forgiven. The cops discovered proof she had tampered with the meal, meant to damage me, which backfired and resulted in injury to her husband. She has been charged with several offenses including risking life, causing damage, and tampering with food, thereby compromising integrity. Saying how this was all my fault anyhow, Kayla had been pleading Jamie not to charge her. Fortunately, Jamie's mind is set on punishing her. Her court hearing will begin shortly. I doubt she can flee this time. My son and I are doing okay, to everyone inquiring. In the meantime, about what his aunt has done, he is clueless. We want our son to know and avoid these circumstances, hence Harry and I have discussed and we do intend to sit down with him and tell him the truth. Having a difficult but absolutely vital conversation with a young child will be challenging but essential. As instructed by my doctor, I also get frequent ultrasounds for my pregnancy every 2 weeks. We want the kid to be a surprise, hence we do not intend to find out her gender. Knowing what has happened to Kayla, my parents have been somewhat protective of me. They are urging me to see treatment since they are concerned this could compromise my psychological well-being during the pregnancy. I agree with them as, while behaving normally, I have a deep-rooted phobia of what Kayla did to my meals and avoid eating any outside food or anything I have not made myself. Hopefully, my husband will help me to overcome this illogical phobia as he knows about it and supports me all through. Update 4. I last checked 8 months ago. Kayla is a prisoner right now. She came out guilty on the allegations. Though I never went to her court hearings, occasionally my in-laws would tell me how Kayla came clean to the court admitting years of jealousy of me. She had always dreamed of one of her best friends marrying my husband, hence when he started dating me, she would always try to harass me since she never wanted an outsider to marry her brother. She became jealous when we told my husband's birthday party we were expecting as she was also going to reveal her pregnancy. She wanted to share her wonderful news since she had miscarried once, but she felt we stole her opportunity to shine. She became so enraged then, from her pregnancy hormones, mixed a little bit of rat poison with my supper. She said she wanted me to wind up in the hospital but she never wanted to physically hurt the baby or myself. She said she deserved a reduced punishment as she never expected me to offer her husband my plate and since I essentially poisoned her spouse. Of course, the judge answered her pleadings. She was put to prison and will be far from our life for some considerable while. Jamie is also at last free since she has also effectively divorced him. We have seen him over the months and keep including him into our family events whenever we can. He informed me that it was never my fault when we spoke and I profusely apologized to him for handing my plate to him. Hearing that I had been rehearsing it over and over again in my thoughts, wishing I could have done things differently so he was never poisoned, I started to cry. That Jamie is doing well right now makes me happy. Regarding Harry and myself, our family now boasts a baby daughter. Our daughter's presence has warmed and lit our life despite the shadows of the past still there. Being a big brother makes our son Nate very happy, and he has been loving and caring toward his little sister. Seeing our kids connect makes us appreciate things. My parents and in-laws have been there for us all through, guiding us through this new phase of our life. My wife kissed another man on a night out. I wasn't bothered, and now she's turning it into a major drama. Sorry if the title doesn't make much sense, I didn't know how to word it. Also on throwaway as I don't want this on my main, bit of context, we've been together since we were 18. Never had a great sex life after the first year. Maybe once or twice a year at most since then but at the minute it's going on 3 years and although it bothers me I love her. And I love our kids so I'm not going to make a big deal out of it. I know plenty of friends in the same situation. Another bit of context is that I've always been mildly overweight but always fit as I played a lot of sports until about 10 years ago when I got really ill and a mixture of meds and comfort eating made me balloon up to nearly 300 pounds. Well 2 years ago I decided to do something about I'm now around 200 which at 6'2" is the lightest I've been as an adult and I've actually enjoyed using weights and for the first time in my life have a bit of abs and some muscle. My wife, having always been far hotter, is pretty obviously insecure about the fact that for the first time we've been together women are starting to look at me and message me on my baking pages on social media. For the record I've never even looked at another woman in that way. On to the night in question. My wife went out with some friends, a mix of singles and in a relationship. She looked stunning and I told her so. I even updated my phone home screen to that picture of her LOL. One of the friends she was out with messaged me about 3 months and the gist was she knows I get no sex. My wife doesn't realize how lucky she is and basically do I want to hook up. I obviously instantly take a screenshot and send it to my wife. Around 4 a.m. my wife gets home and she wakes me up as she gets into bed. I'm half awake but can tell something is wrong and ask what the matter is. She doesn't say anything for a few seconds and as I go to grab her hand she pulls away. I ask if she wants me to get her a drink and she says no. Then she just blurts it out and says I met a guy tonight he kissed me. I didn't kiss back at first then I did. Then for the next half hour we were dancing and constantly kissing. She kept saying sorry and begging me not to leave her. My honest first reaction was so what it's only kissing and dancing. I didn't say that I just hugged her and tried to calm her down. An hour or so later once I got the right words in my head I said, I know you feel really guilty but please don't, I'm not going to leave you and break up our family over some kissing and dancing and I don't love you any less than I did yesterday and this isn't something that's going to grow and cause an resentment. More or less right on cue my phone goes off and it's that friend of hers with a picture and a video of what my wife was doing. This set my wife off again but my feelings still haven't changed and a month later that remains the case. In that month since then my wife has accused me of not loving her because I didn't care, she's accused me of kissing other people and more, which is why I didn't care as I was covering up my own indiscretions and she's accused me of being gay multiple times which doesn't make sense. She keeps asking me why I haven't initiated anything with her even though in the past she's told me she hates being touched and not to ever try it on with her, which I have respected. She's basically projecting and it's annoying me as it's putting a strain on us which she is 100% causing. How do I get through to her that she needs to stop feeling guilty and just move on because I have, as it's not a big deal. I was genuinely more annoyed when she broke my baking bowl and tried to blame it on the cat lol. TLDR, wife kissed another man. I don't care and now she's causing problems because she's guilty and projecting. How do I stop this? Edit. Hi all, just wanted to say thank you all so much for taking the time to respond to me. I really do appreciate it and I'm overwhelmed you all took the time. I keep getting asked a few questions so thought I'd address them here. Over the years we have been to a few different couples counselors and sex therapists, the latest being last September for both. My wife always feels like she's being victimized by them and we stop going. Nearly all have said though they think she is asexual and two even saying she is displaying a lot of signs of being a closeted lesbian, which I have brought up to her before and she is adamant she's not. On that note, I've had a lot of messages saying she wants to feel wanted and for me to be more forward with her. This is not true. In all our sessions she said she doesn't want me trying it on with her. She doesn't even want me to initiate hugs and just bringing up sex makes her feel under pressure. She let me, and our therapists, know that if she ever sex without her initiating it will be no more than pity sex. As for people saying I don't love her. I buy her flowers every Friday on the way home from work. I bake her favorite cookies or cupcakes every weekend. I send her voice notes of songs I'm listening to that remind me of her. I tell her I love her every day. I run her a bath every night. This isn't me showing off, this is how I was brought up to show love for those saying I must have been brought up in an unloving home. People have said that I don't get jealous. I don't love her. If she told me she was having an emotional affair, she spent hours on the phone with someone else laughing and joking, she snuggled on a sofa eating chocolates and watching TV with someone, etc., I'd be devastated. A dance and a kiss isn't a big deal to me and not even close to divorce. Thank you all again for reading XX, second edit, sorry for these. It's 7 a.m. in the morning here now, the day after I posted this. Been talking to my wife since 6 and said she's got a week to agree to go back to couples counseling and she's got to stick it out this time and not just accuse them of taking sides and refuse to go back. She said no. She said they all bully her and make her out to be the bad guy. She said I went back on my word that I forgive her and won't resent her. I said this isn't about the kiss, it's about her reaction since the kiss and that it feels like she's purposely trying to drive me away and make me leave her. She just got up and stormed out the room. She then got dressed and said she's going out until I go to work. Relevant comments. Commenter. She's trying to sabotage the relationship and she's getting mad that you won't let her OP, that's the conclusion I'm heartbreakingly coming to. This hurts infinitely more than seeing her kiss someone else. Commenter. Did it ever occur to you that she wants you to be jealous and to fight for her? Blowing it off and being nonchalant about it makes you feel like you don't care about other men hitting on her. All she wants is for you to get jealous about what happened because if you don't it's going to escalate from kissing to an affair, just to get your attention and reaction. OP, well if she's playing these sort of games then I will leave her. That's what teenagers do, not adults in their 40s. Commenter. Others have said the same, but you both need to have a grown-up conversation to understand what is really going on here. Is the relationship working? Do you both remain committed and do you see a future together? If so, couples counseling is the only way to go. You can't fix it here. If not, then divorce. Do it as kindly as possible, but do it quickly. No point dragging something out which is destined to fail. OP. I'm happy to spend the rest of my life with her. I love her and my kids and the life we have. Would I like more sex? Yes, but we've been to the doctors, we've been to sex counselors and they've found some problems. It's just who she is and I'm happy to live with that if it means I get to be with her and the kids. Commenter. First, her friend who has the hots for you is in her ear. Second, maybe you need to take a look at your relationship and rekindle the romance. Maybe that's what she needs. I mean, why would her friend know about it? You guys are maybe acting like old married couples. And you are too young for that. OP. I try to be romantic. I buy her flowers every Friday on my way home from work, I bake her favorite snacks every weekend, even stupid little things like giving her the dinner that looks most presentable on the plate. On cold mornings I'll get out of bed early to warm her car up and defrost it before she drives to work. On the physical side I always tell her how beautiful she is, how hot she looks because she fucking is, she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen and I wouldn't change anything at all about her. She couldn't be more perfect to me. I just don't know what more I can do, and this is what her friend said to me. The message she sent me was so long and it seems like she knows an awful lot and she also sees it herself. There was one bit I keep thinking back to when she said she was round ours, and I'd made my wife a homemade card and wrote a poem in it, and when I left the room she said my wife made a gagging face to her friend and started laughing. I can remember hearing a noise and then laughter, and I thought she'd just choked on her drink. That hurts me infinitely more than a kiss and a dance. If she's not attracted to men. I have asked her this numerous times throughout the marriage and even suggested if she wanted to explore that side of herself then she could try and find herself and be who she really is. She's always batted it away and said she's not a lesbian, she just has a low sex drive. This has always been my thought over the years and I have brought it up to her privately. In couples counseling and in sex therapy. The sex therapist also said she's giving a lot of signs of being a closeted lesbian as well. How do you have kids if you have sex once a year? Both times we tried for kids she got pregnant pretty much instantly, first one within a month, second one within 2 months. We'd have sex every day but no foreplay or anything unfortunately. Update. It's been nearly 2 weeks since I made the post and the short update is that we are getting divorced. I said in my last post I told her I wanted us to go back to couples counseling and sex therapy. She said no to both as we went before and she felt bullied. She said at sex therapy that unless she initiates touching, not just sex any touching like hugs or hand-holding, it will be against her will and will be forced to pity affection from her. The sex therapist said that's very unreasonable and that's why she felt bullied there. I tried to ask her a few questions too. Are you a lesbian or at least bi? Don't be stupid. Are you asexual? I'm not a teenager with a stupid label. What did he have that I don't? I just wanted to do it. Why don't you ever want to do that with me? Don't know what can I do to make you want to do that to me? Don't know. Do you want me to take the initiative and try it on with you more? Fuck no. I'll tell you when I want it, don't guess. So she refused the therapy and gave me no straight answers. She has also said I've gone back on my word about not letting the kiss split us up because now it is. I said it's not the kiss, it's your behavior since then that has caused me to want a divorce. She said as it's my decision to divorce and it's all my fault then I should be the one to tell our kids and she will have no part of it. That was hard. As soon as they were told my wife left for her sisters and in the 3 days since I haven't heard anything from her. I've tried speaking to her about the kids as they miss her but she reads my messages and ignores me. A lot of people asked about the friend and why they still talk after she tried it on with me. My wife tried to get the friend group to cut the friend out but they all pretty much refused and so my wife just chose to ignore her in group settings. On the night in question the friend approached my wife and told her if she didn't tell me she would send me the video. So my wife didn't tell me because she felt guilty but because she was forced. I've also spoken to a couple of other friends in the group and asked what's been going on. I'm not privy to. Apparently my wife was sexting her friend's boyfriend a couple of years ago. My wife has also been boasting about how she has me under the thumb and she gets away with giving me nothing and I'm too scared to ask. The friend apparently saw me out shopping one day and decided I was now more fuckable, and thought she'd try and exact some revenge on my wife. So she didn't really want me. I was just a pawn in this weird friend group, one of many internal beefs with each other which I've found out about in the last few days. Basically they all seem to hate each other and mess with each other's partners. I'll be honest now and I feel incredibly guilty about it, but when she left my body and soul seemed to take a massive sigh of relief. It was like a black cloud that was dripping eggshells on the floor for me to constantly avoid. I feel terrible for feeling this way but I feel like I'm 6'2" height now rather than a browbeaten 3 foot who was scared to even say anything for fear of being told I'm wrong or insulted or ridiculed. It's like the blinkers have been taken off. Spent the day today baking with my kids, eating Easter eggs and watching cartoons and I haven't stopped smiling all day. I haven't winced or broke out in a sweat worrying I'm about to be told off about being too noisy or watching the wrong thing on TV or there's a wrapper on the floor, etc. Thank you everyone for your support on my last post. I appreciate you all. XXTLDR. We are divorcing. Relevant comments. Commenter. You sound like a good person who just wanted to save your marriage. Glad you now realize no woman is worth being treated like you've been treated. It will be a rough time for a while but you're gonna come out of this stronger. And never date or marry cold basic women again. OP, it is rough and I do feel like a failure for not being enough for her but at the same time I genuinely feel 2 feet taller and 100 pounds lighter since she left. It's a really weird feeling. I now know I'd rather live alone under a bridge than in a household like that again. Commenter. You didn't fail her, you failed yourself by believing all this toxic abusive shit she was feeding you. And that's understandable, abuse creeps up on you until it's under your skin. It sounds like she had you convinced you could do nothing right. You deserve to be treated with respect, kindness and honesty. These things cost absolutely nothing, they're baseline standards for human interaction. At least if you're dealing with decent people. OP, that's exactly how it was. I was scared to even offer an opinion on something and I still am now. My kids asked yesterday what film I wanted to watch and I found myself scared to give an answer thinking whatever I chose would be rejected and I'd be ridiculed. Commenter. She doesn't want to take responsibility and is trying to manipulate you into the bad guy. You want to improve the situation and improve yourself from outside help. She wants the status quo to remain and is blaming the medical professionals for making her confront the way she treats you. Covert narcissists. Look it up so you don't fall into that trap again. It may suck now, but your sanity should come back to you. You've been living in her mind games for a long time. OP. She is 100% making me the bad guy. I'm not on social media but keep hearing about posts saying things like, you give your life to someone only for them to drop you when your halo slips a bit. Whatever lol. Commenter. Dude, look up covert narcissism. She caused all the problems. You tried to fix them but it was never enough or correct for her. OP, that's what I've been thinking about the last few days, that everything wrong in her life has been traced back to me and is my fault. From big things like I don't earn enough money for her to live in the house she wants to little things like she knocked her glass over and it's my fault as I talked to her while she was watching something. If the kids are old enough, tell them she cheated. They are too young for that. I just told them that Mummy and Daddy have decided it's best we don't live together anymore and it's something a lot of grown-ups do but it's not the kids' fault and they are still loved and cherished by both of us. Post the video proof. I've got that video and all the screenshots of her sexting her friends' boyfriends and also there are some screenshots of a WhatsApp group chat where she has been posting pics for strangers to comment on but it's blatantly her as she has a tattoo under her boob which is unique to her. There are also some other videos and pics of nights out which her friend group have sent me. Keep records. UK courts probably won't care as much about the cheating so much as the abandonment. Yeah, agreed, the courts don't care. It's more for my own sake if she tries to twist it on me and say I left her for no reason and she did nothing wrong. I'm keeping a record of her not answering the phone to me or my eldest son and also how long it's been since she left and that she left of her own accord and has chosen to not come back. Commenter. Update us when she realizes the grass ain't greener. OP, she's been out nearly every night since she went to her sister's. I genuinely hope she does find some nice green grass and be happy. Mini update. Sorry for updating here. I'm only allowed to make one update on RA. Also want to thank everyone again for their concern and kindness they've shown me on my 2 posts and also thank you to everyone on Boru who made some lovely comments after my post was shared on there. Unfortunately the post was locked before I found out so I couldn't thank you all personally. After my last update a lot of people commented and messaged me to say that I'm sure my kids are mine. This thought never entered my head until I read what people said. Last Thursday I ordered a paternity test, sent it Friday and am awaiting the results. At this point I don't really care. It won't change my love for them but I'm terrified if they come back as not biologically mine I'll lose them. I discussed this with my lawyer last week who said if they aren't mine it will be much harder to get even any kind of custody. I told him if it comes to that then I'll keep fighting until the end. Blood or no, they are my boys. Speaking of the boys, my STBX has seen them a couple of times with her mom, who is genuinely a nice person, and the kids have been fine. I can't say the same about my baking equipment though. She came into the house on Friday last week when she knew I was out and took a lot of it and purposely broke some bits she knew had sentimental value to me that came from my grandma and my mom. I can't prove she did anything and she brought the stuff back on Sunday and said she just borrowed the items but I love baking and she is slowly ruining it for me. I'd already deleted my Instagram page because she was insecure about the women who followed me and this time she must have remembered I was making a cake for my niece's birthday and tried to sabotage it. I've made notes and screenshots of everything. As a lot of you rightly predicted, she had also been cheating on me a lot, although no evidence of it being physical yet from what I can tell. Her friend who is also in this WhatsApp group where women basically just post nudes and men comment, I still need to get the details of this group so I can finally get to see some boobs again lol, sent me a lot more screenshots of photos she's taken, all around our house, blatantly her bedroom in some of them and one even stood against my car. Also a few of these friends are single and when they hook up with someone my wife will add the guy on Facebook and has basically been offering herself to them. One of the friends messaged one of the guys who still had the chats in his Facebook DMs and sent the friend a load of screenshots to send to me. All in all I must have over 100 screenshots of stuff she's been saying and sending to people and all of that is within the last couple of years so it probably goes on further. As for the divorce still in the early stages. One day I want to fight the next. I just want to give her everything, materially, not the kids, and walk away and start again so I can get this finished and done. If you have any questions I'll try to answer. It's nearly midnight here but I'll try to stay up low relevant. Comment OP. I've already started recording our phone calls, and on the couple of occasions I've seen her I've made sure there's a witness. Feels so sad it's come to this. Makes me want to just give her everything in a quick divorce and walk away. Mini update. Post 2, title, update, got the DNA results and my sons are mine. Thank you for your support everyone, X, mini update. Post 3, title, it's nearly 6 a.m. here. My ex-wife had the kids last night and I'm drunk and lonely. First night I've had to myself in maybe 20 odd years and I didn't know what to do. I thought about getting someone round so I could finally have some physical interaction. Instead I just sat on my own and drank for the first time in years too. Sorry for the boring post. I'm just lonely and wanted some affection. Relevant comments. Next day, thank you. My kids came back at 6 last night and they were pretty much in bed and asleep by 7. Got a day planned at a fair today and then an early night ready for school tomorrow. I just instantly feel better when they are back. Update post 2. I have moved back to my hometown and given my ex the house. I know people won't be happy with that, but I just wanted a clean break and no ties to her or that city. The kids are with me and see their mum on weekends, provided I make the 5-hour round trip to drop them off on a Saturday morning and then make the same trip Sunday afternoon to pick them up. I know again people will say I'm doing what she wants, but if it makes my kids happy it makes me happy. She seems okay with this arrangement although she has flaked twice already. Once the kids say they no longer want to go I won't take them. The divorce is still going through but won't be done for a few more months yet according to my lawyer. I'm baking a lot more now and loving it. Thank you everyone who has thought about me, you are all so great. XX, relevant comment. I am in therapy. It's been a great help in making me realize my worth. Update post 3, title, my 41MX, 41F, messaged me yesterday saying she no longer wants to see our 2 kids and is happy to give them away in our divorce. How to navigate mixed emotions of this? I posted on here a few months ago if you want to look at my profile and read them about my wife kissing another man on a night out despite not having had sex with me for years. I wasn't bothered and was willing to ignore it and carry on, but she kept making issues over it and eventually we split up. I moved back to my home city about 2 hours away and the kids came with me. My ex-wife said it was too far for her to travel to have them at weekends, so every Saturday morning I've been driving them up to her and then picking them back up Sunday evening so they got to see their mom. We'd make fun trips out of it and would take snacks, play audiobooks, have sing-alongs etc., but I'd noticed they always seemed happier to be picked up than taken there. I just always assumed it was because all their stuff and their main home was with me. My ex has started to cancel these weekends a bit recently, 3 of the last 5 she's canceled. She started to say things like, they don't like me anyway, and you've poisoned them, which is not true. I have never said a bad thing about their mum to them or in front of them and never would. Plus I make 2 4-hour round trips every weekend so she can see them and they can see her. I'll be honest, every Saturday after I drop them off I cry all the way home. I miss them so much. They are my little best mates. Every night after dinner we will all do our chores and do a different activity. Sometimes it's a walk in the woods behind my house, or we bake or have movie nights, or read books together. I'm quite good with my hands and love making and fixing things, whether it's baking, cooking, DIY or car repairs, and they have started to take an interest too, so we have a couple of projects on the go like building a kind of Wendy house for them, but it will have games consoles, a fridge for their drinks and snacks etc. Plus we are also building a couple of petrol go-karts from scratch for them to race at a nearby track when they are done, which they are designing themselves and we are building together. Basically my life is taken up with them in the week, and then at the weekends I feel like a lost zombie until it's time to go get them. Then yesterday I received a short text from her saying she no longer wants to see them. All they do is ask for me anyway, they don't have fun there and they basically get in the way. I was absolutely heartbroken for my boys and I rang her straight away. I'll be honest, I started crying as I felt so bad for them and she genuinely acted like I was annoying her for wanting to get to the bottom of it. She then said, sounds like you don't want them either and are just trying to palm them off on the weekends, and hung up on me. I don't even know how I'm going to tell them this. Do I just say she's cancelled for a few weeks and see how it goes? Do I tell them the truth? How do I say it in a way that kids will understand and won't absolutely crush them? Then I've got the conflicted selfish emotion of pure joy that I'll have the whole weekend with them. It's so selfish of me, I know, as they are going to be sad while I'm happy. Has anyone been in a similar situation from my side or the kids' side? How do I handle this? TLDR, ex-wife said she no longer wants to see the kids. I'm sad for them and happy for me. How do I handle this? Relevant comments? Are kids in therapy? I got them in therapy as soon as we split up because everyone in their life is attached to this one way or another and they need an outside voice to help them understand it and someone they can be truly honest with without fear of hurting feelings. Have her give up her parental rights. Why, talk to a lawyer. I spoke to a lawyer today and showed him everything, which was then emailed over to him, and he sent a letter to her divorce lawyer saying that I want sole custody. Commenter, don't forget, child support. I hope you're receiving and getting it adjusted based on the new custody agreement. OP, I don't need her money. I make enough to look after us as is. If I ever was to receive anything, it would go into savings for them. To a longer comment accusing him of making everything up. So men can't be abused and made to feel worthless and unloved. She can keep the house. It's worth about £140k, so £70k is a small price to pay to be rid of her. We don't have alimony here in the UK. Once you are divorced, you are done. We pay child support, but that goes to the main parent, which is me, and she can keep her £25 a week. I don't need it. I've got plenty of anger and resentment towards her, trust me, mate. If she was on fire, I wouldn't piss on her. But I'm not going to show that anger and resentment in front of the kids, am I? Because I'm not a fucking psycho. Why would you walk away from the £70k? It's just going to drag on forever and frustrate the fuck out of me. I know it's not worth it. She's going to wreck the house to lower the value. She'll refuse to let people view it. She'll miss all the meetings. She'll refuse to sign anything. She's going to make this unbearable, and I'll be driving 4-hour round trips hundreds of times for no reason. It genuinely isn't worth it. She will make my life a living hell and would rather walk away with nothing than me walk away with something. Update post 4. Quick recap. Split up with my wife a few months ago after she cheated on me on a night out. I was willing to stay, but she got upset. I wasn't more upset, and I had enough and left. I moved 2 hours away to my hometown and let her have the house. Our 2 sons came with me. I drive them to and from her house every weekend to see them, but she started canceling and then one day texts me saying she no longer wants to see them and is happy to give them up in the divorce. So as far as her giving up her rights as a parent, it's a lot harder than I thought. Both my lawyer and hers have told me that it's hard to do this in the UK, and neither of them have seen a judge allow it unless there is a physical or sexual chance of harm to the children. However, they have both also said they've never presented a case like this to a judge where both parties agree to it fully. They've drafted an agreement where we both agree that my ex-wife no longer has responsibilities towards my children, including financially. Let's see what happens with that, just waiting now to get a court date, but they said that can be months away. On to the hardest part, telling my kids. I'll be honest, I haven't. The first couple of weeks I just said Mum had cancelled again when they asked, and the eldest in particular seemed pretty relieved at this both times, and last weekend they didn't even ask. It's been over a month now since they've seen her. The eldest has also told me that he doesn't like going there anyway, as all she does is sleep and shout. He also told me the other day he prefers his new house and he feels more relaxed. I feel terrible, as I was obviously missing signs before that he wasn't fully happy when we were together as a family. At least he's more comfortable now. I had a bit of a wobble last night with my youngest though. He was watching Land Before Time and then he started saying he misses his mum and then started crying. It was full-blown tears and breaking down, and it was awful to see. While I was holding him I started crying, but I made sure he couldn't see. I didn't say anything bad about his mum or tell him she doesn't want to see him anymore. I just hugged him and stroked his hair and told him I'll always be here for him and he can always come to me if he's upset, happy, or just wants to be silly, and I'll never push him away. Once they were in bed I was in pieces. Blaming myself for leaving their mum. Questioning why I couldn't be stronger and live with it for a few more years until they were adults. It was me who left. It's me who's made them drive up and down the country every weekend. Unsettled them. Uprooted their lives. At 2 a.m. this morning I drafted a text to my wife asking her to get back together and to be a mum again. Luckily I didn't send it. I had about 3 hours of sleep but felt better this morning. None of her family have been in touch either to try and maintain a relationship with the boys. It's horrible to be honest, but they are the ones missing out on these 2 amazing kids. One of her cousins messages me every so often, but she asks more about me than kids, so that either feels like ulterior motives or a trap which I'm not falling into. As for my divorce, MG lawyer has said it should hopefully be finalized before Christmas. Not that it'll make much difference. I don't wear my ring and she has a new 20-year-old boyfriend, not the guy she cheated with. Will be nice though to finally be able to say ex-wife and it be official. TLDR, not much success with kids' mum dropping responsibilities officially. Kids seem a bit happier. Relevant comments. Commenter, why not just say no to her being absolved of all responsibilities? Tell her it's fine that they're not going to come visit anymore, but she still needs to pay child support. Then put it in the bank for your children's future. OP, she barely works. I mean, tested it and she'd pay around £20 a month. Rather go without. To another. She works 15 hours a week. When I did an online means tester, it was about £20 a month. Small price to pay to be rid of her. To another. I have 5-figure savings accounts for both of them, plus my garage, which is a successful business, and I own the land it's built on. £20 a month is £240 a year. I can make that in the morning on a side job on a car. I'd rather do that once a year than have to ever have a reason to talk to her again. Don't worry about them seeing you cry. They've seen me cry before. I just didn't want him to think it was his fault I was crying. Commenter. Were there signs that she was like this? Is it possible this is a mental health issue? Or was she always like this and dismissive? OP. Looking back, she was always dismissive of me. Can count on my hands how many times we've had sex in the last 15 years, and in the end she banned me from any sort of touching, like holding hands or hugging. She was a good mom until a couple of years ago, and then within a few months over half her friend group became single, and that's when she started to change towards the kids too. Commenter. You're getting a lot of advice here, but I would stay away from Land Before Time. It's traumatizing enough as a movie alone, let alone someone whose mothers abandoned them. Always check the movies you let them watch from now on. OP, he said he was going to watch the dinosaur movie, and that normally means Denver the Last Dinosaur on YouTube. I had no idea he'd pick that one. Commenter. If she doesn't want them now, she didn't then either. So please don't try to get back together. You don't know what kind of damage she was doing to them. OP. I never would. It was a momentary lapse. Am I the asshole for not trying harder to inform my ex about our son's passing? Now I'm being accused of hiding it out of spite. I apologize in advance for any formatting issues, as I'm on my phone, and this is a throwaway account since my ex follows my main one. My partner and I, both 28 at the time, had been together for 4 years when I found out I was pregnant. Initially, I didn't want to go through with the pregnancy because my job had promising opportunities for advancement, but after many discussions, we decided to have the baby. At around 20 weeks, just after finding out the baby's gender, my partner disappeared. He stopped answering calls and messages, and I eventually found out through his mother that he had moved back in with her, feeling overwhelmed by the situation. Although he continued to contribute financially by transferring his share of the bills, I had no contact with him. I even tried visiting him, but there was no response. By the time I was 27 weeks along, I gave up trying to reach out and accepted the reality of becoming a single mother. I prepared for the baby on my own, buying everything necessary. At 31 weeks, I started experiencing pain but dismissed it as Braxton Hicks contractions. Shortly before 32 weeks, my water broke and I went into labor. My baby was born prematurely and was immediately taken to the NICU. I tried to contact my ex and his mother again, but there was no response. Less than a week later, my son passed away due to complications from his early birth. Once more, I attempted to reach my ex and his mother, leaving voicemails and messages, but still heard nothing. The following weeks were a blur as my parents helped me arrange the funeral. They also tried to contact my ex and his family without success. Eventually, I stopped trying. I felt broken and couldn't bear the weight of trying to reach out any longer. After the funeral, I told my family not to bother with any further attempts. 5 months after our son's birth and death, my ex suddenly appeared at my flat. He let himself in while I was out, and when I returned, he immediately became hostile, demanding to see our son. When I told him what had happened, he became extremely upset and stormed out. Shortly after, his mother and other family members bombarded me with angry calls and messages, accusing me of deliberately withholding the news of our son's death out of spite. It has been nearly 3 weeks since this confrontation, and they continue to treat me horribly. When I confided in my sister, she said that while she understands I was going through a lot, she feels that I could have tried harder to inform them. This comment has left me questioning whether I should have done more. Did I truly not do enough? Was I wrong to stop trying? I lost my son too and was struggling immensely. I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong here. Edit. Thank you all so much for your responses. I'm sorry I haven't replied to any, but reading them has been overwhelming. Writing this out and reliving the experience has been incredibly hard. I'm going to drink some wine, read your kind words, and cry myself to sleep. I've recently moved into a new flat, and thankfully, my dad has covered the cost of a private therapist who I see regularly. Second edit. I didn't expect this post to get so much attention, but if you happen to read this, Lewis, read it carefully, then leave me alone. I'm going to show my therapist this post and discuss it with her. I appreciate all of your support, even though it made me cry a lot. I'm signing off for now, but thank you again. Update post. 2.5 months later. The original post was locked, but I've received messages asking how I'm doing, so before I close this account, I wanted to let everyone know that I'm alright. The move went smoothly, and I'm far enough away that there's no risk of running into my ex or his family. I've changed my number and deleted all social media, so I haven't heard from them in about 6 weeks. My sister apologized for her earlier comments, but our relationship isn't quite the same. I'm still in therapy and trying to move forward. I visit my son's grave when I can, and thankfully, my ex and his family don't know where it is, so I can do so in peace. Thank you all for your support. I've found myself revisiting the previous post many times over the last few months, and it has helped more than I can express. This is my final update, and I'm leaving this account now, but I want to say thank you again. Relevant comments. When asked to clarify what her sister said or was thinking, my dad was very upset when he found out what my sister said to me. She claimed she didn't realize how much effort we had put into contacting my ex and thought I had just given up like when I was pregnant. However, this seems like an excuse because she was aware of our attempts. Although her apology seemed genuine, and she has since criticized how my ex and his family have behaved, our relationship remains strained. Final update, 8 months later. I had forgotten about Reddit until I was clearing out some apps for phone space, so I thought I'd give one final update before saying goodbye. I wish I could say everything is amazing now, new job, new partner and all that. But it's nothing quite that exciting. I moved into my new flat last year and it's nice, though I had forgotten how expensive it is to live alone. I'm managing though. I did get a new job, similar pay and role to the old one, but my ex doesn't know where it is. There was no dramatic encounter or anything. I just wanted a fresh start along with my new home. As for dating, I haven't felt ready to get back into it yet. I'm taking things one step at a time. My relationship with my sister remains limited, LC. Although she apologized for what she said, I still feel hurt, especially knowing she occasionally still talks to my ex. It's not some dramatic revelation, she just chats with him if they bump into each other, but it still stings after everything that happened. I'm still in therapy and even doubled the length of my sessions around the 1-year anniversary of my son's passing. Thankfully, my ex didn't show up at his grave when I visited, or at least not when I was there. That visit was incredibly painful, and I spent several days afterward just crying and drinking. It was a tough time. My dad has been my rock throughout all of this. I'm still paying him back for all the support he's given me, though he waves it off whenever I mention it. We've developed a lovely Sunday morning routine of drinking tea, catching up and maybe watching some F1 together. It's simple, but it means the world to me. Overall, life is calm, which is a relief. No drama, no contact from my ex or his family, and no major life changes, just one foot in front of the other. I reread everything I posted last year and revisited many of the comments, and I want to say thank you again. I was in a really dark place, and it was hard to see that I wasn't the villain in this story. A mix of therapy and all the comments helped me come to terms with that. So thank you all, this is my final goodbye. Take care everyone. I discovered that a student used sign language to discuss breaking into my home and had been emotionally and sexually assaulted. I'm gonna try to keep this as short as possible. I'm not sure if this is the right place for this story, but I need to tell someone this story. English is not my first language, I'm an art teacher in the Netherlands. I have an amazing class with 21 kids. The majority of them are really sweet, but there's this one kid, let's call her Jane. She has autism and she seems to like me a little too much. She would do her best to be extra nice to me and would defend me whenever one of her other classmates weren't listening or being rude. As far as I know, she doesn't do this with her other teachers. She has a friend group of about 3 others which she always sits with, and whenever they talk there is always one of them that looks at me. It gives me the feeling that they are talking about me, which is kinda creepy, but I guess as a teacher you can expect it. I have always kind of got the feeling that Jane likes me. For Valentine's Day she bought a rose for me. Anonymous, but I know it was her because of the handwriting on the card. On Monday, she was always earlier to class than the rest, 5 minutes earlier than class started, and she would be slow with making her work on purpose so she could stay after class with me. She would also always tell me stories about things at home that she doesn't like about her family and other stuff. She would also very often come into class with bruises and other injuries, but that might be for another story, and she would just be overly nice to me. I would never call her out on any of it because I thought that maybe I was just delusional and it was just her being different, but here comes the actual part on why I'm writing. Last week I was teaching them and Jane and her friends were speaking in sign language. Usually they would just be talking, but Jane was sitting alone on the other side of the classroom because she and her friends were being quite annoying. I know sign language because my brother is deaf, but I never told the class this so they didn't know. Apparently Jane and her friends were talking about me, how Jane wanted to find out where I lived, she does know the town I live in, and wanted to break into my home and do things to me. I can't really go into detail, but that's one thing I heard. I also found out she's stalking me on my way from work to the bus stop and on social media. She also fantasizes about me, and I heard many other things that I can't really say here. I haven't gone to work since because I don't think I can work at that school anymore. I feel bad for Jane that she doesn't see me in class anymore, but I don't want to risk anything. What do I do? Should I go back? I have no idea why I'm even posting here. I'm just so creeped out and I have no idea what to do. Edit. I have seen people complain about my spelling and some other things. I'm 21, Jane is 12. I was writing this on my break with my other job, so that's why a lot of things are a little weirdly written. I have also never posted on Reddit before, so that's also why. Edit 2. I'm gonna talk with her tomorrow at school. Edit 3. No, I'm not gonna talk to her alone. I'm asking 2 others to join us. I could update you all tomorrow. But seeing as many people refuse to believe that my story is true, I'm not sure if I'm gonna do that. I'd rather not get more hate. Last edit for now. Best I can do is update in 2 days. Tomorrow I'm gonna talk with Jane. Thanks to everyone. Relevant comments. If this is real, then you have an obligation to report it and the bruises. I have reported things that have happened to Jane's mentor. Let's just say that her mentor isn't exactly the best person ever. I am reporting it, but Jane's mentor doesn't really care for her students and refuses to do anything. From OOP. Not trying to be rude, but I didn't say I was a male teacher. I'm a woman. Update. Hi everyone, here is the update. Once again, thanks to all the support. This is written late at night and I'm tired, so it's once again very poorly written, but I will try my best. So I talked with Jane, her mentor, and someone else from school. I talked with them alone before we talked with Jane so they would understand the situation better. Jane's mentor was the one to talk the most because I wasn't sure what to say, but when Jane's mentor, let's just call her Maya, asked why Jane did all of this, Jane started crying and didn't want to talk anymore. Maya wanted me to leave because she believed Jane didn't want to talk because I was there, so I left. A little bit later I was called by Maya. She wanted me to come and talk about what happened and what Jane told her. Like a lot of you already thought, Jane had a rough time at home and was indeed being abused, not physically by her parents but emotionally. Her parents constantly favored her younger sisters over her and, in Jane's words, don't care about her. Her older sister would regularly bring multiple boys home while babysitting Jane and her sisters, which is probably one of the things Jane learned about sexual stuff. A lot of others in the comments thought Jane was being sexually abused at home, but that's not what is going on. Jane told Maya that her other classmate, Luca, editor's note, I chose a gender-neutral name as we do not know anything else about this person, who is 2 years older, due to having to repeat a year, sexually abuses Jane. Jane says that Luca claims that this is what love is, and that's why Jane thought that it was okay to say those things about me because she loves me. Jane explained to Maya that she didn't mean it like that and that she wouldn't want to hurt me. Apparently Jane had the feeling that she was in love with me and told this to her friends. They taught her that the things she said, like stalking me and potentially breaking into my house, are part of being in love, and that's why she did it. I saw another comment saying that Jane acts like this towards me because I'm one of the few nice people in her life. I'm not sure. Jane did not say anything that would prove that, although I think that's probably what's going on and that's why she thinks she's in love with me. I really can't think of any other reason why a 12-year-old would like me. This is all I know now. All happened today. Although I don't think I'm gonna get more updates on the situation. Maya is, like I mentioned in a comment, not one of the best people ever. So I doubt she will involve me further, but if everything Jane says is true, I hope she gets some help and possibly a new home. I would love to update further, but that's only if I get updates myself. Have a good night to everyone still awake. My wife's descent, from new job to infidelity, drugs, and tragedy. How our marriage unraveled in just 4.5 months. 4 and 5 months ago, my 37F wife landed a new job. She also befriended some recently arrived people. I, 36M, didn't particularly enjoy them. They were all SJW types, professional victims, hard-bitten feminists. These ladies will scream at you for either not opening the door for them or opening it for them. Neither way is a winner either. I mostly laughed it off at first, but over the past 2 months I observed some unsettling changes in my wife. Married for 11 years, we have 2 children, 10F and 8M. It continued to get worse. She would accuse me of all kinds of stupidity, including that I was born evil since traditionally men subjugated women. Everything I did for her, things she would usually value, became justification for a conflict. It all amounted to garbage. I tried to be composed. Usually, these debates would finish with me stating something like, I haven't done anything harmful toward you. I am only guilty of loving you. Usually it would send her murmurs, and the next day she would be back attempting the same thing with somewhat different justifications. About 5 weeks ago, I had a strong sense of things being quite wrong. She returned late at night without informing me of her delay. Her phone was unreachable to me. She behaved aloofly and was rather drunk. She dismissively told me the next day that I read too much into things and that I was being domineering. This repeated a few more times. Though I believed she had erased a lot of her messages, I tried to snoop on her phone but couldn't find anything conclusive. I did come across a post among one of her new acquaintances talking about how she would approach me about an open relationship. Her adultery was what my gut feeling was telling me right away. My wife mentioned in the thread she would discuss it with me on what is currently the second Monday of December. Christmas is being celebrated with my children among their grandparents. We were supposed to be joining them today. She asks me what I think of an open relationship anyway, trying to initiate this discussion during breakfast like it's simply a thought out of the blue. Fortunately, I knew how to be ready. I had already started recording. Having been reading a lot on Reddit, I understood there was absolutely no way to undo this. Getting out of this with some shred of pride and self-esteem intact was my best hoped result. From now on, my priorities are only safeguarding the kids and myself. I stayed silent, neither yelling or screaming. I entered jaw-clenched interrogation mode straightforwardly. She was all smug up until this point, but it vanished right away when she noticed my expression. Me? Who is she? She? What do you mean? She attempts to project innocence, as though she doesn't know. Me? Don't treat me like an idiot if you wish to have this talk with me. At least you are sincere. Should you be dishonest, what good is this conversation for? She? What do you mean? Me? We cannot have the conversation you wish about our relationship if you lie to me right now. You seem to be hiding something, clearly. Who then is the man you fucking? She. I am not. Me. Oh my God, there's more than one. She exclaimed, me. Don't. Just avoid lying, fucking. You have simply completely undermined my faith in you. You lie, as I can tell. I divorce you or you are honest and we work through this. Right now our marriage is over. Not arguments, not debate, not nothing. Exactly divorce. Do you realize? She said, but, me, say it. Do you follow? Do you realize I would divorce you if you lie? Say it like that. Do you realize I already know a great deal? You seem to me like a book. Should I find you lying, we are off. Tell me you have an understanding. She says, I understand. She then relates to me about 2 one-night stands she went on with friends. I probe their names, whether they are married, if she wore protection, etc. Both of them are married males having children. Then she tells me she intends to pursue this since it's beneficial for her and I have no right to control her. She also tells me she intends to sleep with a colleague at work. Fuck, what the fuck? I also ask about the colleague. His name is his wife's. He is married but, as she says, in an open relationship as she wants us to be in. She says she will arrange for some of her friends to see me. One of them seems to be rather keen. In actual fuck, what the hell? Having seen this friend, I would not touch her with a barge pole. I say to her I have little interest. She shows me the sequence to open her phone when I ask for it. I closed myself in my office while she went to the toilet. She flips out. While she was back pounding on the door, I ran recovery software on the phone for deleted stuff and came over a lot of agonizing proof. 30 minutes later, I also downloaded a spying tool from an online vendor. I handed her the phone when I got out and urged her to go. She persisted in her arguments. I mainly answered with single words. Over all of this, she hardly seemed regretful. She was ranting at me that I was behaving controlling, holding her back like men always kept women back, that I never loved her, that she had every right to do this, that she expected me to just accept this, that it wasn't a big issue, etc. I refrained from responding. I really scarcely spoke at all. I simply packed her belongings while she whirled, calling at me. I found myself at the front door, patiently waiting till she ran out of steam. She grudgingly headed to her parents' house at last. I informed her she was single now so she could do whatever she wanted as she was headed down the stairs. I could not control her anymore. In January my lawyer would be in touch. I just slammed and shut the door as she turned to answer. Later on, I observed as she talked about it among her friends. They were telling her that she deserved better than me, that there were empty threats from my side, that she was strong and demanding what she was entitled to, that I wouldn't follow through. You want to gamble? They're telling her that she could just accuse me of domestic violence if necessary, frightened me greatly. One of them accused her ex-husband of abuse, Then went to detail how she had screwed over him and taken everything from him. Right now, I have cameras ordered for my residence. I realize I have to log everything now. Simply said, what I was seeing defied belief. I have never, ever threatened her in whatsoever capacity. She then began massaging her AP to align. They decided to convene at a hotel. I felt somewhat shocked. I searched the internet for AP's wife. It wasn't too long. I told her everything, including the continuous hotel activities, and got her to agree to me as a friend on Facebook. She hung up grateful to me. 2 hours later I received a video from her. She confronted them when she went to the motel. From the yelling, this wasn't the first time her husband had lied. You're emptying, asshole. Are you doing this to me once more? To the young ones once more? We were done if you ever did this again. I told you, she screamed, then she entered the room and captured my wife getting ready on the side of the bed. That first time, I started to throw. The wife of the AP smacked her and cursed her out. I messaged my wife to let her know I watched the hotel's video and that I never want her close by ever. She seems to view our interactions as some kind of pissing competition, in which case she, in her perspective, is winning. She is absolutely insane. I find nothing comprehensible. She seems to be detached from reality and to not fully grasp that we are separating. I told her relatives in the WhatsApp group of my wife that her adultery is the reason we are divorcing. Before cutting off from the gathering, I thanked them for making me welcome and part of the family. From her side, I have had a few calls and messages. I haven't read them or replied. Simply said, I lack the will for it. I told my folks everything when I phoned them. My father messaged my wife informing her she would not be welcome for Christmas. Right now I'm at my parents' place and spoke with my boss. He is allowing me time off till mid-January to straighten things out. I have been observing my wife's progressively hysterical conversations with her new acquaintances. My wife doesn't think she has lost her family, that her marriage is over, or that her AP doesn't really give a damn about her. She has messaged me a lot and even visited my parents' house requesting to be let to celebrate Christmas with us. Should she refuse to go, my father threatened to contact the police. I'm Googling divorce attorneys right now, crying my soul out. Though I believe I have been in shock, once I arrived at my parents' house the agony really hit me. Simply said, I find no logical sense to it. Reading their conversations and talking with her hurts me so much. I answered her text just twice. The first? What you say has no bearing. I don't know your name. You do not represent my wife. My wife never would have smiled while destroying my heart and soul. We are going to get divorced. You have no influence or authority to demand anything from me ever again. What you say or wish matters not to me. We are done here. The second, like I said, you are not my wife. You are not known to me. My wife would never subject our kids to the misery of growing up in a damaged household. Whichever you are, you appear to be pleased with your work. My dearest friend, my wife, was lovely, compassionate, and thoughtful. You are an abomination of self-obsessions and self-absorptions. The last message stopped the others. At times the suffering is quite intolerable. I wish none of this occurred. Though I wish I could get back with her like previously, I simply cannot do that to myself. The worst Christmas I have ever had. Though I couldn't help myself, I told the children mommy wants no more children. She wants to be with other men and knows we will divorce. They are inevitably unhappy. Luckily, I have my parents here to assist. They treat them with love and affection while I am a total wreck. Though I am not going back to her ever, I will strive to get back on my feet for the sake of my children. I wish I had waited till after Christmas so I could straightforwardly enter counseling. I immediately blurted it out when they inquired when their mother would visit. I have no idea what happened. Should I return to her, I would never be able to see myself in the mirror. Her actions clearly show unacceptably disdain and callousness. I'm gone. Simply said, I find this incomprehensible. Why should she assume she could demand anything from me right now? Is she psychologically sick or anything else? I apologize for the rambling diatribe. I simply needed to let things out. Edit, I am good with monitoring. I spoke with a friend's attorney, who is familiar with my membership comes with the phone. I own it. I'm good since my wife is using it. I own it in the subscription, so monitoring my own gear is not prohibited. Update 1. Since I last wrote, then a lot has changed. Though the fact is I've been a pitiful, crying mess since I last posted, I wish I could own it. My wife's conversations with her friends captured me in some kind of obsession. These conversations revealed a lot of crazy and nasty comments. Ultimately though, it was when my STBXW detailed in very harsh terms how her marriage and particularly her children were a burden in her life, that she had been deprived of the opportunity to be a successful woman living up to her full potential. She spoke of me, her spouse, how I was a repressive agent preventing her from leading a happy life. She lacked a lucrative profession, plenty of casual sex, etc., mostly due to her family. I broke right now. It was too much for me. I read and reread every line of every email and conversation I had over and over again for the next 30-ish hours. Looking back, she omitted any specifics about our actual burden or oppressive behavior. It was just general remarks without any references or proof. I have never stopped her from doing anything, actually. For practically everything I pay for. Her part-time job's minimum pay would not be sufficient for anyone. Actually, even if she would constantly drop out halfway through, I have encouraged her interests, desires, and aspirations even if she did foolish actions in class. Every day I made sure to tell her I loved her and thanked all she did for the family. I would take her out, romance her, be at her side anytime she needed me. If this is oppression, then I would like some, kindly. Still, I digress. I passed out once, at some point during reading. My 3 closest buddies were in the kitchen with Dad cooking dinner when I woke up. These guys have been in my life since childhood. We'll call them Frank, Bob, and Mike. Having invited them, my dad brought them up to date. I quickly broke down once more, and until Friday evening I was entirely absent. His ex-military friend Mike lost his left arm under the elbow. Actually, we were all there for him during his recovery. His wife left him. Fortunately, they did not have any kids. Mike did fine. He adopted 2 children and acquired a really nice girlfriend a few years ago. He arranged a Zoom conversation with his psychotherapist, who supported him along his rehabilitation. He greatly helped me to make sense of my emotional situation. Though he focused on amputees, he told me most wives unfortunately flee after their husbands are maimed, and his experiences and lessons really helped me. Actually, he asked me to see my soul, identity and spiritual being as largely related to my marriage and husbandly responsibilities. That part is dead now. Like an amputee will experience phantom pain in a missing limb, I will experience phantom agony from the dead part of my identity. We talked for hours, and since then I have been consistently better. Bob works in a security company as an executive. He's rather well off. I don't really know what he does, but he never talks much about his job. Sunday morning, I was chatting with a lawyer I could never in my wildest thoughts ever afford to even talk to after Bob contacted some law firms on retainer for the company. Bob was bullied a lot and has always been a major geek. He assured me he would pay the bill, I should not worry about it. Having finally been able to pay me back for the beatings I often gave him, so disrupting his bullies, made him delighted. Married with 7 children, Frank teaches in a private school for youngsters. Exactly, 7. To death, my children just love him and his family. Frank has been keeping an eye on my children's welfare and needs while I recover and straighten things out. Yesterday was a fairly busy day. Early in the morning it began with an STD screening. The bitch handed me chlamydia, another 6-month screening recommendation. When I found out, my self-pity party changed to sheer fucking wrath. That is me. On gloves off. Completely customized. If I could get away with it, I would offer her nothing. The attorney found the ex-husband of my wife's feminist buddy who boasted about screwing him over. It seemed really simple using the court records. I never would have given that any thought either. I conferred with him on WhatsApp. He gave me many thanks, but he also told me about what this harpist did for him. I can now project from my STBXW what to expect. It turned out to be terrible. Following our conversation, I was ready for a fight. I am getting ready for battle. Hearing how he had been homeless and how he scarcely had seen his children in 4 years, all based on his ex-wife's lies, was painful. Though I am at a disadvantage as a man in the judicial system, I will make sure I have loads of proof. Due in great part for our son's benefit, my lawyer advised a preemptive strike using a restraining order based on her harsh and aggressive remarks about men in general. I'm seeking full custody as growing up in a home with an openly anti-male parental figure is clearly very detrimental. I advise the attorney to start straight away. She expects my wife to be served with the restraining order today. Using Zoom, I spoke with my STBX. Remember that she showed up at the door to argue with my dad and hasn't contacted me at all. She doesn't seem to care about any of us as she hasn't contacted the kids or anyone else either. The call was utterly strange. She clearly was attempting to appear her best, she was fully done up with great cleavage. I have not seen her looking that polished for years. She tried to get me off into a fight to make me enraged during the whole chat. I cooled myself rather well. My attorney had advised on what to ask for. Apparently, if efforts are made for a peaceful divorce before seeking a contentious divorce, things go really well. I had the call under recording. I even mentioned to her I was. My STBXW turned out not to be disappointing. She began with this ridiculous claim that there are two kinds of penises. One type that shrinks and increases depending on whether they are erect or not, and another type roughly the same size whether they are erect or not. What exactly in the fuck? Someone opens a call to their husband like that? She then pondered on how excited she was about the end of the present limitations so she could go out and personally study this more. I said simply that I was only interested in talking about our divorce. I had no interest in her interests. She became quite nasty when I refrained from latching on the bait as she intended. She muted herself once, telling me she was off to the bathroom. I then observed her conferring with her friends about what she could do to me. She cursed me just for being a male multiple times over the call. I still had this weird sensation that she was seeing this as some sort of game, that she was in control, and that I had no other choice except to put up, shut down, and give in to everything she wanted. We made no improvement on our actual divorce, so I came to the conclusion, okay, great, a contentious divorce it is then. You handed me chlamydia by the way, and unlike you, I haven't been sleeping with anyone else, hence you better get yourself to the doctor. She simply scowled at me, saying, you're right, I don't believe you. I no longer care. I really have no idea at all what is going on with her at this point. The lawyer was startled to say the least, when I sent her the recording. At this point, everyone finds my wife crazy. She is perhaps. I can really utilize the chat logs also in court as I own her phone and the subscription. As it turns out, monitoring my own gadget as much as I choose is completely lawful. The harpies were debating fiercely following our summons, but I could at last set it aside. What they discuss doesn't matter to me anymore. Unless something I haven't told them about, my attorney is sure we will win this thing. There we are then. Although it still hurts, at this stage I may consider it as phantom pain. I am going for the jugular. No prisoners, have given up feeling guilty about myself. I have to look after my children and myself. I am fine. My children will be too. I will make sure they receive as much therapy as they demand. My STBXW will shortly be a memory, and I will begin to create a new, better life. Edit. She didn't tell me, but I discovered today she knew about the chlamydia and underwent treatment. Bitch. Fuck. She was smiling and kissing her new buddies about it. Update 2. I receive a lot of comments like I am somehow winning or strong or in some other sense going out on top. When I go over my postings, I can see that my resentment of the circumstances filters through and I could seem too calm and certain of myself. To be honest, I am not. I want this never to have happened. As the children mature and begin their own life, I wish my family was still together and that I had a long, lazy, comfortable life ahead of me with my wife. Here none of anyone is the winner. The whole train is burning in the ditch. My wife has gone off the rails. I'm not sure her problem is. She is acting as though nothing is amiss yet refuses to see a medical practitioner for probable mental problems. She seems not to be regretful or guilty. She behaves as though I'm irrational for not simply embracing everything she wants. Not even the children have spoken since D-Day. I have to, so I am divorcing her, acting and forward separating our life. She has left me without options. By now, there is no going back. I wish so much this wasn't absolutely required. I weep myself to sleep every night for my personal loss and the knowledge that my children will now grow up in a shattered family. I can never trust her ever again. The fact that my children, in truth, no longer have a functional relationship with their mother hurts as well. From your child's perspective, why does mommy not want to see me anymore? She loves me, not sure. How the devil do you respond to that? Please let me know if anyone knows. I sure as hell don't. Every day I get up and tell myself that my heart is already shattered into so many broken pieces that it cannot ever mend. Only to be proven incorrect all day, every day. She doesn't care. My wife still doesn't know I can see her messages. She is quite sure that I would never leave her and that my response to her behavior is completely irrational. She continues to disparage me, our marriage, and our children around her acquaintances. Why she hates us so much is beyond me. None of the things she charges us of doing to her pals has come true. My attorney secured a temporary restraining order against her, as I already noted. Yesterday morning there was a hearing. Since no further direct threats were reported, it was not extended. Using her knowledge of my infection as a threat to try to have her agree to an unquestionable divorce, my attorney advised I hope we could split reasonably using a logical approach. I always assume the worst possible outcome and detest the fact I have to view her as the adversary. I would be able to live with her if she wanted to leave me. But why would I have to be pushed into this somewhat hostile process? Why does she want to damage the individuals who used to love her as much as feasible during the process? From this, what likely benefits she could get? I would value any analysis on this. Simply said, it makes no sense to me. Should I visit court, I most likely will have to pay her a lump payment for the equity in our house, etc. Since she shows little interest in the kids, I'm hoping I will gain custody of them should it get to court. I will most likely not be liable for alimony either. My attorney advised us to try to get her agreement for a friendly divorce. I agreed. Perhaps this week we can meet with my STBXW and her representative. The ex-husband who fell for the lying harpist stayed New Year's Eve with the kids and myself. It is simply amazing how unfairly the legal system treats fathers. Now, should we go to court? I have no fantasies of a fair procedure. His ex lied her head off. The court simply accepted it as reality without any evidence at all. Not since has he seen his children. He almost buckled under the pressure of paying irrational amounts of child support and alimony. He had been musing of permanently calling off things. He has hope again with the fresh data he gets from me. Together, we spoke with my lawyer. She advises him to sit on the evidence until my wife's and her counsel's meeting. If he acts right now, it will demonstrate to us that we have access to all their communications. My lawyer wants to complete the divorce between my wife and me as quickly as feasible and as seamlessly as possible. Right now, I only hope I can get away from her. Should she choose to fight, it may stretch on for an endless period and cause great anguish. All I need is freedom. If I schedule a meeting or if we proceed straight to a contested procedure in court, I will post an update. Update 3. Sadly, strange circumstances still exist. Yesterday afternoon was my meeting with my STBXW and lawyer. She stated she neither had nor needed a lawyer, showed up 30 minutes late and omitted bringing one. Rather, she brought one of her new harp buddies, who was under sensation till following the hearing. My attorney had given me rather clear directions on behavior. I was not to respond negatively to whatever they said. If they approached me, I was to answer in a non-confrontational way or, if at all possible, favorably. I had to keep my mouth shut entirely if my lawyer laid one or both of her hands flat on the table. So they arrived late without masks, naturally. My STBXW followed the harp censor and tried to offend me and wind me in each manner she could have thought of. My attorney tried to start the conversation on the current topic, our divorce, but they were just fooling about. Many times they chuckled at their own disparaging remarks directed toward me. Watching it made one truly disgusted. My wife still thinks this is all a hoax, hence it is obvious that I cannot divorce her. Only she, in her opinion, can divorce me, only if she so chooses. Should she do, she expects she will have everything. I sat there wondering, what the fuck is it going on? I said nothing of much significance. I answered just a few times, and my responses fit, yes, you're probably right, or I really don't know. At last they ran out of steam, and my attorney got the word in and began to present the suggested amicable divorce settlement. She first claimed that I would pay my wife a sizable lump sum of $60,000 for the equity in the property, investments, etc., and that I was ready to be giving for a fast, peaceful resolution. Before my STBXW became all enthralled, coupled with her harp pal pushed on by the horrific-looking harp next to her, my lawyer hardly finished the sentence. Where would my STBXW want to sign? Several times my attorney inquired whether my STBXW wanted to sign straight away without first reviewing the rest of the agreement. No, she said. She began mentioning their desire to get to the pub and when she may anticipate getting the money. My attorney thus summoned someone in, muttered something to them, and there was a frenzy of action. We were asked to sign 2 copies when an older woman requested our identity paperwork. The elderly lady stamped it after we were done. I subsequently learned she was a notary. Almost poised on the palm of her hand at this moment, my attorney thanked my STBXW and the harp and said to them we were done. My wife dropped off without even carrying her copy of the agreement with her. She left it on the table. Looking at her flat hands and at me, my lawyer examined clearly. She wanted me to keep quiet while they were still inside the building. My lawyer smiled at me and said, "Congratulations," when we could see them crossing the parking lot. She then went into great detail on how this was the strangest session she had ever attended for a negotiated divorce. She informed me she will forward the copy of my STBXW to her upon a hearing before the judge or, should she obtain a lawyer requesting it. It was buried in my lawyer's drawer till then. On the surface then I seemed to be going through this divorce a lot more easily than I first imagined. My STBXW can still fight this and get legal counsel. She would try to call in every conceivable favor she could think of to get me a hearing with a judge as quickly as possible, probably by video conference, my lawyer advised me. After the advice I received on Reddit, I also hired a PI. Yesterday, he showed pictures of my wife kissing 2 separate people at 2 different bars. She then checked into a hotel with one of them. I have a lot of proof stacked up should I need it. If such comes to pass, I simply hope it is sufficient. Just $60K and I'm free. My wife agreed to provide me complete custody, only a one-time payment, no spousal maintenance, nothing. I simply have to find the money now. I have a strategy, and Bob volunteered to front me the whole sum I should need. I still don't sense this as being real. I completely expect her to pull the "here's my aggressive lawyer and I'm accusing you of molesting the kids and domestic abuse" to trick out of her hat. My attorney advised me to pay for everything I always pay for, keep a very low profile, and not even gently rock the boat. The advice is to simply wait, avoid talking to anyone we both know. React to nothing, basically zero initiative until the hearing. I only have to remain patient and hope for the best right now. Update 4. Therefore, yesterday was the hearing. I consider myself to be essentially divorced. The paperwork will take 4 to 6 months to be official, but at this stage essentially nothing anyone can do to alter the result. My wife's and my own stopping it jointly is the only alternative. I am really fucking weary. I haven't slept in. I'm not sure how many days, hence if I'm somewhat erratic, I'm sorry. I simply have to clear this all out. I have to blow off some. After I type everything out, hopefully I will be able to fall asleep. 12 days after turning in the documentation, my great attorney scheduled an early hearing. She certainly made some favors calls on this one. I am straying from the path. It has been crazy from the weekend forward to today. Many police personnel appeared at my door early Friday morning with a warrant to search the house. I felt somewhat perplexed. Concerned for the children, I asked whether I could bring them outside while they conducted their search. Thank goodness they agreed to that. They hardly told me anything, although I did get a copy of the warrant. I was so rocked that I cannot really make any sense of it. Everybody who claimed that the behavior of my ex-wife was most likely drug-related was correct. One may say that drugs at least had a part in this. The police started utterly destroying my residence. When I phoned my attorney, she spoke with them. Unfortunately, at the time there was nothing that could be done since the warrant was current. Though I never gave it any thought at the time, I now have cameras all around in case I get falsely accused. I have sound and videos covering everything. Should I wish, I may possibly file a claim later. To be really honest, I'm not sure whether I have the will or energy for it. Perhaps I will simply mark a line over it and carry on. Then my ex and her 3 harp buddies drove my car while drunk and high, slamming into a house at great speed. I knew nothing then. They all had narcotics in and on their bodies, they were all intoxicated and they all were detained. The crash treated them really roughly. The passenger seat occupant is in critical condition. They have no idea whether she will even make it. Let us call her Henrietta, the lead harpist who boasted about lying about her ex-husband in court and screwing over. Let us call her ex-husband Henry. I now live somewhat close to him. Thank goodness the search turned up nothing. I said that my ex moves with her parents. She no longer resides here. I have no idea what she is doing. No, I never let Henrietta use my car, etc. I simply collapsed when I returned to the house. Everything was absolutely destroyed. I suppose it was just the last straw. I could only think of calling my dad, who brought the kids and me home to remain with my mother. While I was crying on the back porch, eating my mom's incredible comfort food, feeling bad about myself, my dad gathered a huge gathering including 26 friends and family. They restored and cleaned my house totally. They cleaned every room, including clothes, dishes, furniture, even the walls and ceiling. Never has it been this tidy. They even corrected all the minor issues, such wobbly door hinges, etc. I simply couldn't fathom they would treat me in such a manner. How I can ever pay them back is unknown. Thanks to my friends and family, during the weekend I went from feeling suicidal to really good. Henrietta's residence revealed more drugs, and her partner was absent, no babysitter either, just the kids alone. CPS picked the children, and on Saturday Henry was granted temporary emergency custody after showing the judge the chat logs together with evidence of abandonment and drug heaps. He was granted custody really easily. Henry has scarcely seen his children for the past 5 years. He is over the moon delighted. He had been gathering funds to fight Henrietta in court at the time. He still has to visit court to finalize things, but right now the chances are really favorable. Everyone believes Henrietta will have to serve time. If her companion misses it, most likely it will be serious time. Henry will next try for recompense for all the bullshit Henrietta put him through and child support. Though he isn't expecting much on this, to be honest I believe he doesn't want to waste his time battling in court. He wants to be with his children to see to it they lead happy lives. Henrietta has been somewhat negligent toward them, quite obviously. Bob has been fantastic and arranged Henry's renting flat through a buddy. I now understand that concerning Bob's personal or professional life, I know absolutely nothing. I am going to correct that. Still, I find myself off course once more. Driven off the road and into a house, Henrietta was behind the wheel. They were all somewhat damaged, and given the circumstances, the drugs and the alcohol, search warrants were issued for everyone's house. My ex still uses my house as her residence. I made the decision on Sunday to sell this house and start living far away immediately. I fear this will most likely recur. She called me on Sunday from her parents. Their residence underwent search as well. Saturday they visited their daughter in jail, and they no longer believe anything she says to them. Long story short, she has been lying to them about everything. They came over to discuss on Sunday. She told them she was staying with me and that we were trying to work things out. The evenings she has been out partying and cheating. They knew nothing about what she had done to the kids or herself or what was really happening. She admitted she cheated, but she basically told them it was a one-time intoxicated error. My wife contacted me Monday trying to convince me to post bail. Her parents have already told her no. It is $15,000. Following our conversation, my attorney created some documentation declaring that the bond is deducted from the settlement until she shows up for court and it is released. Her mother was listed in the agreement as the caretaker of the leftover sum. My lawyer wanted me to get my wife out as she wanted her to have no justification for skipping the hearing. My ex signed as she had no options. Monday afternoon she was let go. Her parents tell me she refused to follow their criteria for her to continue living there, terms like ceasing drugs, committing to rehab, adopting an open everything policy, abandoning the bad pals, etc. She supposedly left their residence Tuesday to hang around with some of her new buddies. She missed the hearing. After presenting the judge everything, including the incidents over the weekend, I will have complete custody. The agreement we signed guides the settlement. Just 30 minutes, it was quick. Although it will take 4 to 6 months to pass the paper mill, this is actually done. Not really much can be done to stop this now. That takes us to now. I couldn't seem to go to sleep. Everyone was praising me and acting as though I had a significant triumph, but sure as hell doesn't feel like I won anything. Right now, this is only suffering. I still find great love for my wife. I am sure it is over and that there is no going back. She was my best friend. My soulmate up until lately. And even if I feel my love for her has been fatally damaged, it still aches like a motherfucker. In this there are no winners. I lose, so does my wife. My children lose. Not really have the words. I feel as though I should be celebrating that I lost both of my legs, yet since I acted, one of my legs could have been cut below the knee while the other remained cut above. It seems almost like that when people compliment me. Like they are praising me for saving half a kneecap while losing both of my legs. I thus cannot really sleep, and when I do I am caught in horrible dreams that rouse me covered in cold perspiration. I apologize, I am just grumbling a little here. Still, the hospital called today to let me know my ex is hospitalized. She still is on my health insurance, and I remain her emergency contact. She will have to remain for observation for a few days. She has lost some teeth and damaged her jaw. When I got there, it turns out some of her new friends had rather brutally beat her up. I brought her parents. From my wife's phone, word came out that Henry had chat logs of Henrietta boasting about what she had done to Henry. They thrashed my wife and kicked her out believing she had given the logs to Henry. She still doesn't seem to realize that I have access to check her phone. Quite amazing. Until I get the paperwork in hand, I will continue to pay for insurance, her phone, etc., just as I do now. I simply won't believe it until I can see it right before me. At the moment she has nothing. Could she perhaps return home? She asked. I said simply, no way in hell. Unless she cleans and keeps clean for at least 1 year, her mother is not giving her 1 penny. They offered her to live with them under the former tight restrictions. I find it difficult to picture her managing if she rejects. Since everything started, I have only seen remorse from her. But I believe it is regret she can no longer sustain with her madness. She did remark, I am sorry I ruined everything, but I doubt that is sincere. She scarcely turned to look at me during my visit. Seeing her in this state hurt. She is an adult, hence even though I intended to shield her, I have to shield my children from her risky and erratic actions. Other than that, she showed no interest in the hearing. She did not inquire about the state of her friend who had been gravely hurt. She sat there, apparently annoyed, basically inert. This still doesn't make sense. She is now devoid of everything. For what reason has she wrecked her family and caused great suffering for so many people? A buzz and some haphazard sex. Until she has been clean for a lengthy period, I am going totally NC. Simply said, I cannot handle all this insanity. Update 5. Many PM'd me to get an update. I simply lacked the energy yesterday when I was supposed to post one. I feel quite gloomy and rather exhausted. I barely sleep, and when I do, dreams haunt me. The good news is the youngsters are improving. My dad is a champion. I have no idea what I would do without him. Just me, him and the children. We visited his cabin to ski a little this weekend. It was fantastic. I hardly contacted my ex at all. I did speak with one of her harpist friends, the one in critical state. She woke up, but she looked absolutely horrible. Her nurse told me she was depressed since no one had cared to check up on her while she was there. They had just turned away from her, after getting in touch with her relatives. I asked the nurse if I may speak with her. I am concerned the person who beat up my ex will come for me and the kids, so she consented. Although I know I shouldn't, I thought I should find out from her what had transpired since my wife started working with them. She asked me first whether I wanted a BJ for $20, so that was not very embarrassing. Instead, I gave her $50 in return for information. Every one of the Harp Pals is a serious drug user, addicts. Against the wishes of the other two, Henrietta brought my wife into their group and persuaded her to do drugs and party with them. To pay for narcotics, they sold sex favors. The main one is Henrietta. Though as she said, it's all bullshit to protect our own imagined egos. They all advocate this strong feminist, my own body approach. We truly prostitute themselves for money to get drugs. First, my wife bought into them, and it didn't take long before she developed an addiction like the rest of them. She started selling sex to pay for drugs once she became hooked. Hearing that the person you loved more than anything to feed her drug addiction is not easy. She desired money, hence it makes sense. From what she tells me, meth is mostly involved now. She has stolen, cheated, mistreated and lied to everyone in her life, hence nobody visits her. Nobody wants anything to do with her. She told me, devoid of even a blink, how depressed she felt about surviving. She looks like walking death without cosmetics and hopes nothing for the future. It hurt. Listening to her broke me. I shed a lot of tears for my wife's benefit. I'm not excusing her. She lost since she chose to play with this boy. She shall now pay the cost. I'll go back to her later. She also told me everything about the guys that beat up my ex-wife. Death threats, resistance to arrest, drug possession, prostitution, drug trafficking, child abuse and neglect, DUI, property damage, and auto theft have been charges Henrietta has been assigned. She will most likely go away for a while, at least, I hope she will, as her flight risk has been denied bail. I want to thank all of you who contacted with expertise handling addicts before I begin. Many cautioned me that given the walls closing in, my ex might attempt suicide now. She tried to purposefully OD, and you were right. I had before spoken with her father the great possibility she would have to attempt something. We agreed to keep a close eye on her. Fortunately, she still does not know I have live data from her cell. Saturday we were in the cabin, and I received a message from her that seemed to be a suicide note. She told me about the addiction, the prostitution, how she let everyone down, that she would do the only thing she could, etc. I got her whereabouts as I had the mobile monitor and quickly phoned her dad. Her father raced outside and discovered her comatose on a park seat. She was driven straight to the hospital and pumped. She was rather hypothermic as well. Imagine what would have occurred had he come just a bit later. I shudder. For now they have her on methadone. She can no longer refuse treatment as her father has effectively been declared her guardian. She will undergo a sedated detox. Her father had her forcefully taken to a rehab clinic. I'm not sure when, but most likely this week her father was hired for her abandonment of her children, not for her OD. Giving up your children seems to show that you are not logical, but trying to stop is acceptable. Still, she will receive therapy as fortunately I have not had an opportunity to terminate her life insurance yet. Long as my ex isn't told that I am, I have volunteered my ex-FIL to assist with the finances. The individuals who beat up my wife made me rather afraid as they might come after the children and me. Recall, Henry showed in court conversation logs he thought my wife had sent him. Henry agreed to rectify this once I spoke with him since he gained from the revelation. I'm not sure whether I mentioned this, but Henry is an enraged manly meat mountain. He grew up on a farm lugging goods since he was a small child, hence he resembles Hulk and could split the typical guy in half. Let's just say he is somewhat terrifying if you do not know him. He bends down walking through doors, has a crew cut, and some facial scars. Actually, he is incredibly soft, patient, and compassionate. Though for him it's a last choice, I don't doubt he will use force if he thinks it necessary. Still, he visited the boys' residence, a true way whole by the means. He grabbed the two guys by the neck and informed them that Henrietta had given him the chat logs and that since they hurt someone they knew, They had a choice to make: go with him to the police and confess everything related with the assault, or face him right there and expect some very severe permanent injuries if they chose option 2. He let them know he was rather optimistic they would go with option 2. Apparently, they lacked quick enough access to the police. Obviously, I am not bothered about them anymore. I will shortly be moving after finding a new apartment. Bob once more came through. I am somewhat depressed overall. This is weighty on my spirit. My friends and family keep me going. I know I have to be strong for the kids. For my ex, my heart hurts despite all. Although I still love her, I know we cannot get back together, hence I am not regretful of marrying her. She is not the person she once was, and there is simply too much hurt between us. Before all the suffering lately, we led quite a wonderful life. Without her, I would not have my children. I would not give them up for anything either. I know it will hurt for a long time. Hopefully, I am strong enough to go through it. Oddly enough, knowledge of my wife's addiction has helped my children cope. Talking about mom's illness is much simpler, and she will take a long time to recover. She still loves them, etc., etc. Right now I am exhausted and depressed. We are going to watch Madagascar 3. Henry is here with his kids. I am working to create as many wonderful fresh memories as I can. Henry is doing the same. His and my children now seem to be doing far better. We'll be good, I believe. Appreciate all of your help, everyone. Here, I believe, my last post will be this. Last update. My ex died in a rehabilitation center. She must have taken the medications while there somehow, but nobody really knows how she acquired them. One physician conjectures that she ingested anything like a bag and that it exploded. I will not be answering comments or posting going forward. I appreciate all of the useful comments and ideas you supplied. My mom and sister spent years trying to push me back into my ex's arms, but I married someone else, and now we're expecting a baby. When I was 16, I started seeing my best friend. Together until I graduated from high school, he proposed and I turned him down. My family asked me to rethink as we may have a lengthy engagement or pledge to reunite, and there was much turmoil with them. For a while, my relationship with my 36-year-old brother weakened. The one with my sister, who is 32, never recovered. She got intolerable when she started dating my ex's brother as she was confident my ex was the ideal fit for me. My siblings invited my ex everywhere, including several family holidays, but I said nothing since he was their friend as well. That is until my sister started advocating for our reunion. No matter the circumstance, my sister tried everything from try to arrange for us to share a room during holidays to setting us on blind dates. One invited my ex to it. I had enough after a time and urged my parents to step in. They stopped inviting my ex to events or letting him tag along so much and were upfront with my siblings. It was only marginally better, but while my brother withdrew, my sister did not. It all came crashing when I ran across my husband on a semester abroad. We simply clicked even though he attended another university but from a different nation. For me, it was fantastic. We started dating a year ago. Except for my sister, my family was really glad for me. She persisted in saying I would grow out of the honeymoon phase. I obviously didn't, and I would quit talking to her if she pulled anything else after many, many battles and tried to get me back with my ex. After that caution, what does she do? She appoints one of her friends as my husband's date, asks me to spend all my time with the bridal party, aka my ex, and makes me her maid of honor. The poor girl tried to pass at my husband, and we didn't know until we were at the reception. Since we are not married, my sister stated it was acceptable to explore things with others. I left the celebration, and the next day I chatted with my brother and parents. I said that although I won't force them to make decisions, I will not interact with my sister ever again and will cut off all communication with them should they try to mend things between us. While my dad and brother indicated they would support my choice, my mom was distraught and sought to compromise. Apart from 2 tries from my mother, over 6 years I haven't spoken, written, or anything with my sister. From gifts to tantrums, my sister has tried everything to mend with me, but I hardly interact with her at all. If we're at a family dinner or gathering, I just pretend she doesn't exist. She tried to generate drama or made snide remarks at first, but she gave up when nobody supported her. She would not be involved in any planning even though she did have a meltdown upon learning she was invited to my wedding. According to my brother, his relationship with my ex has worsened subsequently and he feels bad for continuing along for so long. Though they are not as close now, they still talk. The problem? I finally said we are having our first child. My mom's birthday was several weeks ago. Though my first granddaughter, this is not the first grandchild. Except my sister, everyone was really delighted. My mother observed that and asked me for tea one other day. Though my sixth sense warned me not to attend, I wanted to be optimistic. When I arrived, my sister's automobile caught my first attention. Then there was my sister, her husband, my ex, and his lunch as I walked in the door. Since my childish approach has lasted for so long, they wanted to intervene. My ex said he was merely trying to be romantic, but he realizes I wouldn't value it. His mother apologized already. I should forgive her since I was only hurting his sister for wanting the best for me. I was just texting my dad, brother, hubby, and looking at my mom incredulously. My brother-in-law had the guts to tell me I was a nasty person and I should learn how to act like an adult since I am now pregnant. My mother then started reading a letter about how hurt her daughters weren't close, how my sister was wrong but she was well-intentioned, etc. My sister then read her letter, started to cry and told me essentially another form of what the others did. I sat there until my brother showed up. I said nothing to anybody. Beyond anything I have ever seen, he was furious. He took my items and informed them all he was truly disgusted and disappointed. We left and remained in his car until my dad and husband showed up. By then I was just crying and he kept apologizing. I'm not sure what occurred there, but I emailed everyone except mom, including my lawyer's contact details attached, and said I never want to be bothered by any of them ever again. Should they, I will report it to the police. Nobody has got in touch, but my dad told me from experience that my mother and sister are hysterical. They assured him they hope to fix things and for my sister to be in my baby's life, maybe even acting as a godmother. Right now my dad is living with my brother. While some family members don't, others help me. Since my sister is now following the narrative that my husband is keeping me away from my family, I have even had mutual acquaintances phone me concerned about her well-being and asking me what happened. Although I detest having my business open to the public, I did follow the public path and shared a lengthy Facebook post about everything that happened. Though it wasn't exactly planned, I believe my sister, brother-in-law, and ex are deserving of dragging. Now my mother has been inconsolable, which makes me uncomfortable, but not as horrible as she made me feel with her little intervention. A few days ago, I agreed to meet with her and set the ground rules for any future contact, including therapy, family therapy, explicit boundaries, no sharing of information about me with my sister, and separate holidays. Above all, she will definitely be cut off should she ever do anything similar once more. She is ready to do it even though she feels this is excessive. She believed it meant instant access to baby news and that it was all fixed, but I explained to her it is a process and she has to show she has changed. My dad and brother continuously apologizing for not halting their refusal to interact with my sister earlier. Since they were able to go on and flourish, we have forgiven them. Though my MIL is dubious if cutting my mom's access to her grandchild is the best course of action, my husband supports whatever I decide upon. She feels it is finally my choice. About what to do with my mom, I'm conflicted. Commenter. What is their rationale now that you are expecting? Should you quit acting out make-believe with your husband and come to see your happily ever after resides with your ex? Regarding your child, what? Will your ex and his family welcome her? Oop. Although my sister says she is not trying to bring us together anymore, I cannot take away her opportunity to be an aunt. She stated I'm a poor sister since I spend so much time with my fantastic sisters-in-law. Of course, I disagree with her. My problem is knowing what to do with mom. Commenter. She wouldn't be your best friend without you dating your ex. OOP stands for, though I wish I could tell you, I have no idea her mental process is. My spouse believes she is simply psychologically sick. The ex, he still owns the mixtapes and CDs I created for us while we were dating, which is the most ludicrous and terrifying thing. He still finds great value in those objects, which are roughly 20 years old. Commenter. I'm kind of amazed your stalker ex, and yes, I will call him that, is still in your brother's life. Said another way, hold strong with your mother. No deadlines, she must prove she can follow your guidelines. Your sister has to live with the results of her deeds. OOP. To be fair to my brother, he did start to cut him off when I informed my parents I was somewhat uncomfortable with my ex always there. I lived away for college but would see my family on breaks. He also worked very hard to make my husband welcome, which degraded his relationship with my ex even more since he felt betrayed by my brother. My husband is one of my brother's closest friends nowadays. He only talks to my ex about our nephew or to avoid being nasty. Commenter. You have to understand that your mother is endorsing all of this. She knows your mom also believes it's appropriate, therefore a major reason Big Sis is ongoing this. This makes me somewhat depressed since my mother was always so friendly to my husband and now I'm questioning their whole relationship. For some background, neither Indian nor from a religious family are we. My parents were decent, polite ones. At first, They considered it to be a romantic thing, but subsequently came to see it wasn't. They pushed me to start college and all around. Now, I know my dad really helped me, and my mom might have just followed along and had the same ideas as my sister. My sister suggested that we would be best friends with the brothers. Update 1, same day, 16 hours later. The modification I wanted to post but couldn't. I want to thank you for the so far great support and guidance. Since there are too many for me to personally address, I would like to add a bit more information in my remarks. I broke up with my ex when I was 18. He is 47 today. Our separation sprang from my unwillingness to be engaged or married. The fixation of my sister on wanting both of us to be best friends and brides drives her insistence. Although my mother has always been rather kind to my husband, I am starting to believe it was all a show, which makes me rather depressed. Although he has 2 children with an ex and has been with other people since the separation, my ex has never been married. Given he has only ever wanted to marry me, my sister feels that is a really romantic thing to do. I should also emphasize that his compulsive actions go beyond myself. From the grapevine, I know he was quite similar with his children's mother. Now he is focusing on me since my sister is supporting it, since she wants his help in returning me to my good graces so she can be a good aunt. When I informed my parents I was somewhat uncomfortable with my ex always there, my brother did start to cut him off. I lived away for college but would see my family on breaks. He also made a very great effort to make my husband welcome, which degraded his relationship with my ex even more since he felt deceived by my brother. My husband is now among the closest friends of one of my brothers. He only talks to my ex over our nephew, the son of my sister, or to avoid being nasty. Although I suppose only my dad was in agreement, both of my parents seemed to be encouraging of my not wanting to be around my ex so much. We would enjoy quality time together, thus my mom told my dad she was making my preferred tea and cookies on the day of the tea party, but he could remain. Thinking it would be a great sentiment from my mom, my dad left to hang with my uncle. Right now he is really irate. When they met, my husband tried very hard with my sister. Now he simply dismisses her and thinks she is mentally sick. Though we don't know whether she is or not, her behavior cannot justify anything. Their official perspective is that it would be best for me to confront the core of my problems with my sister, hence they invited the ex and his mother. Furthermore, my spouse and I are from the same race. We are not really religious, neither Indian. Neither my ex nor my spouse have any financial differences. If such exists, it would benefit my husband. Finally, the circumstances infuriate my sisters-in-law, both the wife of my brother and the sisters of my spouse. My husband's sisters and he will be discussing her comment with their mother. My brother and his wife are debating permanently cutting off all communication with my mother. They would let her visit my nephews for a while in between either. The more I read, the more I believe I might have to go no contact with my mother for the benefit of my child. Thinking all their interactions were phony breaks my spouse, and he becomes even more angry that she made me doubt I was a nice person. Although I know my family still has a lot of talks to go concerning my mother, I will surely be getting a restraining order against my sister and the ex. Here is the appropriate semi-update on the current situation of my family. My mother said she knew better even after we spoke. She claimed I am a nasty person and that she will be obtaining either custody or rights pertaining to grandparents. Though I am nothing like what she describes, I still panicked, so we wrote her a letter about it. Moving permanently, my dad informed her he could stand by her terrorizing his child. Also choosing to go no contact are my brother and his wife. Though I understand it appears somewhat abrupt, I believe I understated the degree of hopelessness I experienced following the intervention. Later on, my husband advised them to consider very carefully what they valued and to be friendly and open to everything but would not raise a child in a poisonous environment. Reason 3,271,637. I love my hubby for this. My mother and her fakeness really break my hubby. She will never get anything from him, he says, which is as much retribution he wants. My MAL was informed about her comment by my husband and sisters, who also helped her to see why it was rather out of line. She is, as many of you would guess, a very devoted mother from a lovely family. My dad and brother keep atoning for any part they contributed to this. It astounds my dad that we have reached this position. For him, he claims, everything is still strange. Still, they claim they are ready to assist me in battling any foolish struggle my mother or sister might muster and back me no matter what. Update 2. I would like to thank you for the nice words and encouragement. I chose to publish it here so it wouldn't be removed as the original was. Though they are both wonderful and terrible at the same time, I am trying to keep upbeat about everything. Sitting my nephews down, my brother and his wife told them Grandma was sick and tried to hurt Auntie Diamond and the tiny cousin. Grandma might not be living with them anymore, they said, But that does not mean she loves them less. Though the kids are smart, it was really difficult. Although Auntie is no longer in their life, they do not care as they hate her, not because of me alone, but rather because she is not exactly great with them either. When she was told, my mother lost it and began asserting she had rights and she would be able to visit her grandkids. Mostly because of my brother's MIL coming to visit, my dad is looking for a permanent apartment but will stay with us until January. We have the space. He is quite depressed. He has contacted divorce attorneys, moved bank records, etc. already. My mother has been sending him innumerable emails, messages and calls, but he responds to nothing. He was advised not to block her right now by the lawyer. He thought about maybe forgiving her, but a few days after my last post here I had a significant increase in blood pressure since she chose to visit my house with his sister. Though my mom knew I didn't want her there and my sister had never visited my house, I suppose that doesn't matter now. Knowing my mom, the cleaning girl let them in. I haven't had time to let her know she was not allowed to enter anymore. I observed the automobile, while I was returning from some errands. I skipped this time as well. I phoned every relative, and my husband's sister, was the one closest by. She challenged them and warned them either they left or I would call the cops on them for trespassing. They went and I started to feel ill. When we visited the doctor, they advised me that all the excitement was not good and that I should start unwinding or else the baby would suffer. Along with my brother, uncle, and husband, my dad headed home carrying every single item he could have thought of. According to my husband, my sister was also present and kept yelling at him that he wrecked her family. My dad told my mother and sister they nearly killed the infant and he also wants not to interact with any of them once more. Though it is not happening, my sister kept messaging my brother begging for aid. Since his mother has some crazy beliefs, my nephew is losing so much of his family. Hence, I am devastated and somewhat sad for him, but it is what it is. Regarding the custody and grandparent rights my mother wishes to exercise so much, my attorney wrote her a letter declaring she harmed the kid and my health and declaring, should she continue to harass me, it will become official legal business. Using her harassing of me as justification, my brother also sent her a letter. My mother and sister have both turned down attending treatment. Although they may be mentally sick, given all of this comes to light, it is clear they have long-standing agreement. Spending holidays with my family, maintaining health, and attending therapy will be my main priorities. Update 3. Hi, I figured it would be a good fit as I had some time and had several requests for an update. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for your comments, letters, and every piece of advice since we owe you for making us even more cautious than we were. A few asked me what process we utilized to find the baby's gender. After 20 weeks, I announced it. We wanted to be sure and feel comfortable about the announcement, hence we waited so long because we had experienced a loss in the past and we were ready to share it. We were also stupid enough to believe it would be especially meaningful for my mother. I sent it to my husband after publishing, and he spent a few days reading your comments, mails and advice. We cleaned the house and fortunately discovered nothing, but we still felt somewhat vulnerable and so visited a motel with my dad. Then we discovered a tracker on the vest of my fur baby. He has a humorous vest since he is a pretty small dog and gets cold a lot. I never would have considered checking there, but we found the tracker when my dad took him around the hotel grounds. My sister approached him about me and reconciliation. We moved since I was somewhat offended. We are fortunately able to afford it. Not merely empty, we are renting our former house as well as right now. That house used to be my favorite, but today I feel it's destroyed and contaminated in some sort. Sadly, not just me but also my brother, spouse, dad, and even the family of my husband feels the same about their residence. We changed our numbers, acquired new devices, and let friends, companies, and the police know. We began family and therapeutic sessions as well. Nevertheless, I have really forgiven my dad and brother, they still feel great shame about the circumstances. We are healing as a family nevertheless. Mom and sister argue they don't need therapy and they are not wrong. My dad created a new will whereby my sister's son receives a trust fund and some inheritance but my sister receives a nominal sum. He really is done with her. Though I felt awful for her, I resolved to concentrate on my baby. She is here, we are blessed. Since my mother is no longer with me, this is not the experience I considered. Yet many friends and relatives have really surprised us. Eventually, we were so worried that we began testing some people we knew nothing about by telling them I was about to go into labor. It worked like magic. We cut off those who were still providing information to my mother and sister. When we clarified the thinking, the rest made sense. We have been having a torrid affair because of my undying love for the baby, thus my ex, who my friends now call Bates, went around stating the baby was his. Nobody believes him now, but it caused my husband to call Bates's company and inform him of all the madness. Long story short, Bates was suspended while internal review was under progress. Given their requests for more and more information and their seeming contrition, I nearly guarantee he will be let go. My mother has searched for us, but none of the people who know of our whereabouts have contacted her either. Her dad's attorney wrote her a letter saying that since she is unstable, all letters will now go via attorneys. Just my dad and myself, since I felt so horrible for him being by himself. I still feel terrible even though he has assured me he will be all right and that nothing is my fault. In the world, he has been the best diaper changer, feeder, and babysitter. As usual, my nephews are loving. My dad even visited the son of my sister. She started creating films threatening to injure herself if my husband stopped isolating her from the family, thus this came about. She seems to have stopped it when my dad emailed her regarding visiting her son and advised her he would call the police about her threats. Finally, someone mentioned that I gave Bates false hope. That cannot be more far from reality. I spent years uncomfortable since I assumed he would move on. After I spoke out and saw my husband, I spent a lot of time berating my sister over it. I married after my sister as I had a very long engagement. Though I still love my mother and sister, I put a good life for my family and me over that affection. Over this entire process, I have come across a great deal of compassion, love and loyalty. Strange as it sounds, I feel happy that all of this exploded. Hopefully, it is not too tangy. Many hugs from me. Update 4. My dad moved into the guest house when we formally settled into a new house. We concluded that although it would be great for him to be with us, we all still need our space after many conversations, in and outside of therapy. We will be choosing what to do with the previous place later. We are still renting it now. About 3 times a week now, my dad has grandchildren all gathered around. She refuses to allow him to have the child until she knows where he lives, which, to be fair, is a typical thing. But considering she is insane, we do not want her around. He still needs to see my sister's child separately. Mom objected to the lawyers about how unjust it is. Though little she can do about it, my dad still gets to visit every grandchild. My dad informed me he had a confession around a month ago and dear reader, my stomach started hurting. She still lets him see me since he pays for my nephew's, sister's child, tuition and babysitting. Not wanting to keep secrets, he felt so bad for hiding it. I told him to relax and that there was nothing wrong with it. My dad received an email on Mother's Day with a link to an Instagram account with a somber video on my mother and how most of her family has deserted her, as well as how much of a saint my sister is for being there for her. Though I just forwarded it to the attorney, it was truly pitiful and infuriated me. Dad formally asked for divorce in May, and the procedure is still underway. I believe that's final as my dad said he would sooner drink bleach than go back to her and my mom insists he is mistaken. My dad was given Father's Day by my brother and husband, who had a great time. That day, my sister uploaded a lot of items, but we wanted Dad to enjoy the day, hence we blocked him from ever knowing about it. They also went to a hotel, got a suite, and set up a tent in the middle area for the kids and a little tippy for the infant on a camping trip with them. To be honest, one of the finest things I've ever done is have a baby. Witnessing my husband be the wonderful father I knew would make me very happy. Though it is demanding, we have a lot of help. I have my rocks at my side, thus I am thankful beyond everything. My sisters-in-law and I now have a little calendar for sharing age-appropriate activities for the children. If they so want, we let them know they do not need to hang out with individuals they dislike and that their voices count. We have tiny get-togethers, brunches, etc. Right now, they are all fixated on the infant and claim to be her defenders. To be honest, without my sister present, family time is now a delight rather than a chore. She simply saps the enthusiasm from the room. I know it's awful to say. Along with staying in the guest room roughly once a week, my meal enjoys spending time with the baby. She replied gently that she wanted nothing from the infant for sleepovers or anything. She respects and listens to me and sure, I have broken down occasionally as I miss my mom a lot. I miss the mother I had, or believed I had, not the one who informed me I would be a nasty woman or awful mother. According to my therapist, it's a marathon and to keep the positive first. About good, Bates was let go. Not only that, but his industry's reputation suffered nuclear-level harm as well. So was his brother's, but he still has his job as far as I know since Bill is not in an industry that gives reputation much thought. About his hurt, how I'm denying him what is his, and how my husband is so intimidated by him that he had to go and professionally destroy him since he cannot ruin anything else, Bates sent me a 12-page, double-sided, single-spaced letter. I say seems as my lawyer reviewed it and sent me a synopsis. I did not read it. The grapevine also told me, no, I don't ask anyone. They just tell me since they know he is stalking me, that the mother of his children relocated and he didn't even care and stated it was for the best. This man wants to play family with the baby and me and hardly gives his children any thought. Mommy already let him move back in with her, hence sadly he won't be homeless or anything. I doubt he will learn anything from this. Not the most flashy update, but rather just what is. Oh, and with my dad's okay, my spouse burnt or donated every single item my mom or parents handed him. Even with memories, he believes, life is too short to allow her room in his life. Commenter. I am rather happy you are visiting all that with the intact good portions of your family. I appreciate Bates is a nasty guy, but has he ever done anything relevant or connected to his work? I truly don't see the firing component. OOP. It's a really close-knit one. And when you have a bad reputation, it shocks you. He is not giving up his business. Before this, he was considered as a good but detached feminist single dad. He even informed certain colleagues that I stayed with him for more than our scheduled visit. Commenter. OOP, I have respect and am sorry for what you faced. I am reading your entire story from the best of Reddit from my house in India at 1:30 a.m. As healthy and pleasant as you both are, I hope your child develops to be as well. Also, I hope this whole mess ends soon so you may be back with your mother following the end of her XF dream. Respect you, keep fighting. OOP. That's a great attitude, but I will never chat to my mom once more. I miss her a lot. I shed a lot of tears. The baby deserves the greatest family we can offer, and my mother is not part of it. She is not the person I thought she was. Though I have to safeguard the baby, it hurts. New update. Long time, no saw. Though first I want to thank you for all of your comments and letters. I have some updates for you. I value it greatly as every time I log into this account I am inundated with essentially wonderful stuff. Nobody will probably read this, but for those that want updates, they are mostly decent. Let's get right on with that out of the way. Now following several arguments and outbursts from my mother, my parents are divorced. That is it, kept the house and received a lump payment. We are all quite thrilled for my dad, who seems like a new man. A little flashback. We didn't terminate our cleaning lady during all the hoopla. This woman had been serving my husband's family for decades, and her absence from work due to what her insane relatives did caused great anxiety in me. We are not slobs either, and she is not kneeling or anything like that polishing floors. In any case, my dad told her she was on paid vacation till we moved into a new house and to kindly wait for us should she wish. She was not fired at all. Her family was likewise really delighted about it. Because they were so appreciative of what he was doing for them, my dad occasionally started gathering food and goods from them. Well, my dad is currently seeing her. Her sister runs her own nail business. She is a really beautiful woman who has grown children, hence she can relate to the dynamics occurring occasionally. She is happy with him as he has been quite clear that he is neither moving or getting married. She values her independence. When her mother learned about his new relationship, she almost passed out. She kept claiming it was a late midlife crisis and he had to turn to be a sugar dad. I obviously heard this since I don't interact with her, but last I heard she is struggling. She depends on my dad and struggles as she was never adept in budgeting. She had to stop making insane purchases. My dad is not assisting my sister with money anymore, hence she is also suffering. You see, he was ready to stay on helping for my nephew's benefit, but then things became very difficult. Starting to nickname my child an affair baby, my nephew said she is not with her own father. Saying they were only he, not my kids' cousins, he pushed one of my nephews on my husband's side during a birthday party, calling my other nephews delusional. The children were bewildered and thus very confused, but they told an adult right away. Dad spoke with him, but he kept repeating it. When he spoke with my sister, she claimed she had no way to stop a child from speaking the truth and that not all children always do. He is severing them, he informs her till something changes. She sobbed and fretted, but she also was really tenacious. My nephew attends public school now since my spouse forced my dad to cut them off. Bates, well, he is still without work. I know I was vague about it, but some of it had to do with stalking, irony much, and he worked in a field connected to vulnerable women. He was therefore sacked for this. The company he worked for didn't want this all over them. He has sent 2 more very long, handwritten, rambling letters. As he only has my lawyer's address, guess who has the honor of reading, compiling and submitting those rams? My lawyer is a champ, I love him. Apart from that and the rumors, I have not had any negative experiences involving him except one. A random woman approached me at the grocery shop to find out whether my child was Bates's baby. I was startled and froze. She stated he had a picture of us on his page when I asked her what she was on, and I should feel bad for hurting such a decent man. Turns out he is still following the story that my child is his and that I loved him so greatly. That is all old news. The picture comment really startled me the most. There is nothing public or like that about this picture. That is it. It was emailed once to a family group. I told my husband right away, and he got furious but under control. We made the decision to smoke the rat. To cut a long tale short, my dad's two sisters were providing information to my mother. Though he was somewhat let down, my dad had no questions about cutting them off. They still implore him to meet with them once more. His family and mine are doing fantastic. We have seen them frequently and have spent some family holidays since the last update. They also hardly interact with my sister and mother. Since it turns out she was not a fan of our mom but preserved the peace, my SIL is actually quite glad about it. Also quite beautiful are my in-laws. She is over the moon about us allowing male overnight babysitting now. Her grandchildren are all happy to be with her. Sometimes she has all of them under one roof. She used to be a flight attendant, hence their preferred game is to act like an airline. We don't worry as they love her generally and we know she is nice with our children. My mother kept stalking her, so she had to make her socials private. She prepared her own bed, hence I am sure she is quite jealous. Last but not least, my hubby keeps me sane even in small matters. We wonder whether we ought to adopt another baby or even have one. We still have to decide, but we have a tremendous support network and the advantage to have these talks. I still long greatly for my mother. When I know there are milestones I can no longer enjoy with her, I occasionally cry. Yet, she is a bad person. Thus the safety of my family comes first. Last interesting tidbit. They went camping last Father's Day. It was excellent save from some poorly placed sunburns and bug bites.